He spent his whole life chasing the peak of martial arts, but he never quite reached that final summit. To change his fate, he bet everything on a legend and dragged his broken body to a forbidden sanctuary. Deep inside, guarded by a divine dragon, grew a golden fruit said to grant immortality. Covered in blood, he looks up at the tree in disbelief the legends were actually true. He stands before the glowing tree, finally reaching the end of his journey. The legendary fruit of immortality is right there for the taking. He takes a seat on the dead dragon's head, finally claiming his prize. With this, Gilphus believes he'll have all the time in the world to reach the peak. He doesn't waste a second and takes a huge bite out of the golden fruit. That was Gilphas Eldragon, the man known as the strongest in the world. Decades pass, and things haven't exactly gone as planned. The legendary warrior is now an old man on his deathbed, surrounded by his grieving family. His eldest son, Gilliam, can't hide his sorrow as he watches his father fade away. Gilphus tells him to stop making such a pathetic face, it's just his time to go. Gilliam holds his hand, worried about how empty their home will be without him. Looking back, Gilphus realizes the legend of immortality was just a story, but at least he had a full life with a family. He smiles at his children, telling them he has no regrets. He closes his eyes, ready to let go of everything. But that's a total lie on the inside. He's absolutely furious that he's dying like this. He grits his teeth, desperately wishing he had just a little more time. He reaches out one last time, still obsessed with that final peak of martial arts. And just like that, the life of Gilphas Eldragon officially comes to an end. But then, he suddenly wakes up feeling strangely light, wondering if he was just asleep. He looks down and realizes his hands are tiny and very much belong to a baby. He can't believe it. He's actually been reborn as an infant named Zeke. Zeke stares up from his crib, freaking out over what's happened. He tries to stay calm, but for a 10-star master to suddenly end up in a diaper is definitely not normal. Then it hits him, it has to be because of that golden fruit he ate all those years ago. It wasn't immortality after all. The fruit actually granted him reincarnation. A tiny grin creeps onto his face as he realizes this is his second chance to reach the peak. He looks around and notices dozens of other babies in cribs around him. Zeke figures he must have been reborn back into the Eldragon family, but he's being kept in some separate building. Suddenly, the doors swing open and a group of maids roll in a cart filled with bottles. One of the maids announces it's feeding time as she prepares a bottle of strange red liquid. A goblin starts screaming as the maids grab it. Zeke watches in horror as they start draining blood from the creature. Nearby, another baby instinctively spits out the red liquid, making a total mess. Blood splatters across his face, leaving him completely stunned. A maid picks Zeke up next, while the others continue the feeding behind them. He looks at the bottle and knows right away there's no way that stuff is milk. The liquid is packed with magic power, and he's shocked they'd feed something this dangerous to infants. As the bottle reaches his mouth, his tiny body reacts on pure instinct. He's in a panic, suddenly remembering that he's in the body of a helpless infant. As he realizes the red liquid is actually ancient dragon's blood, he wonders if everyone here has completely lost their minds. He knows he has to spit it out immediately, even if he's already swallowed a little bit. All the other babies are already coughing it up, and he needs to do the same before his body literally explodes from the mana. But then a thought crosses his mind. Is spitting it out really the right choice? His eyes widen as he realizes this is actually the golden opportunity he's been waiting for. If he can manage to absorb all this magic power, he might actually surpass who he was in his past life. This is his chance to finally reach the true peak of martial arts. Instead of rejecting it, he decides he's going to use every single drop of that power. He stops struggling and starts drinking the dragon's blood as fast as he can. With blood dripping from his mouth, he stares ahead with a terrifying look. They definitely shouldn't have underestimated Gilruadoras. An Eldragon maid feeds baby Zeke, noticing how strangely calm he is during the procedure. Zeke isn't just drinking. He's focused on absorbing every bit of the ancient dragon's power to reach a level he never could in his past life. The dragon's essence flows into him as he takes it all in without a single cry. Covered in the blood of the experiment, Zeke manages to pull through. It seems he wasn't the only survivor. The other infants in the nursery made it as well. The exhaustion finally hits, and he drifts off to sleep. Fast forward 7 years, and Zeke hasn't wasted a single day. He spends his time doing insane physical feats, like balancing a massive boulder on his feet during a one-handed handstand. Looking at his progress, he's pretty satisfied with how this new body is turning out. He understands that the source of true power exists within all living things. The dragon blood he drank as a baby was packed with an immense amount of it. It gave him and the other survivors a physical foundation far beyond any normal human. But even Zeke is surprised by the way his body has transformed. Despite all his efforts, he's only managed to reach the 1-star rank. He expected to be at least a 4-star by now, and stares at his hands in frustration. In this world, a star represents the ultimate compression of one's source power. In his previous life as Gilphas Eldragon, he was the only person in history to ever reach 10 stars. 7 years have passed since he was reborn as an illegitimate child of the current family head. His mother is gone, and his father has never even bothered to show his face. Zeke wonders what kind of parent would just abandon their kid like this. He reflects on how much the world has changed in the millennium since he died. Now it's all about the strong devouring the weak. The dragon's trial was the ritual he went through as an infant. The survivors were supposed to be trained as elite warriors, but something feels off. He looks at the maid, hoping for some answers. In 7 whole years, not a single instructor has ever come to check on him. He calls out the maid, asking why he's being denied combat training when he passed the trial. He tries to get any information about the other children or the main family, but she keeps her mouth shut. Her refusal to give a straight answer is starting to get on his nerves. She just stands there with that same blank expression, repeating the same lines. Zeke asks point blank if he's being mistreated, but she claims her only orders are to take care of his basic needs. He notes that even this maid is a 3-star fighter, which would be enough for basic sparring. Since she won't help, he decides to just head into the forest on his own. He leaves the training grounds behind and disappears into the trees. Deep in the woods, he begins his unconventional training. He forces himself to eat poisonous herbs, treating the bitter, awful taste as part of his growth. As he moves through the brush, he notices strange roots that seem to be trailing him. Something is definitely watching him from the shadows. A massive anger boar bursts out of the foliage, glowing with a weird purple aura. Zeke spots a black mist surrounding the beast, something that definitely didn't exist 1,000 years ago. The boar charges, leaving trails of dark energy in its wake. Zeke remains calm and sidesteps the attack with perfect timing. He follows up with a heavy punch, blasting the boar back with a burst of power. Zeke looks at his hand, surprised that, even at 1 star, a light tap from him could do that much damage. As he hauls the boar carcass back, he reflects on how the quality of a star is what truly counts. He's starting to get bored of this isolation and wonders if it's time for a journey. Hidden in the trees, a watcher is stunned that Zeke killed a boar with a star despite having 0 training, and the kid even spotted him. Zeke's life has been rough. His mother died young, his father ignores him, and as the child of the family head, he's basically a prisoner under constant surveillance. The observer in the woods realizes this situation is becoming much more interesting than they anticipated. Back at his quarters, Zeke senses a powerful presence nearby someone at the 4 or 5-star level and wonders what business they could have with him. 2 uniformed men from the Eldragon family suddenly appear, and Zeke demands to know what they want. The presence of the Eldragon emblem makes him even more curious about their visit. An official bows respectfully, announcing they've come to take Zeke for a special examination. Zeke is completely blindsided by the news. He shouts in frustration, since absolutely nobody mentioned anything about an exam until now. Zeke can't wrap his head around the fact that he's actually back. Seeing the main house again after 17 centuries feels surreal. He remembers being taken from his home as a child and told he wasn't even fit to enter the grounds in his own clothes. This place is the Eldragon family's exclusive school, the Dragon's Nest. Every kid born into the family is expected to enroll here for training once they hit 7. And today is finally the day of the entrance exam. A boy with blue hair walks up to check on Zeke, looking pretty worried. He introduces himself as Langus, and mentions Zeke looked like he was in some kind of trouble. Langus seems timid, but Zeke can tell he's got a decent amount of nerve for coming over. Zeke introduces himself back, keeping things simple. Langus is surprised by Zeke's casual attitude toward the exam. When Zeke admits he doesn't even know what the test is, Langus nearly has a heart attack. Their conversation is cut short when a loud voice starts barking at Langus. This guy is Retin, and he's already acting like he owns the place. He starts berating Langus, telling him to just go home and play babysitter. Retin and his buddy burst out laughing, mocking Langus's father for being a mock dragon. In the Eldragon family, the hierarchy is absolute and strictly enforced by a monarch. There are the rookies at the bottom, then the common soldiers just above them. Above them are the captains and the elder dragons who run the whole show. But below everyone else are the mock dragons, those who failed to enter the school. They're treated with nothing but contempt, viewed as mere imitations of the real deal. Langus clenches his fists, wanting more than anything to prove they aren't fakes. Zeke speaks up, asking why it's supposed to be impossible for Langus to succeed. Retin just points and mocks them both, claiming they're all just too weak to matter. Zeke isn't bothered. He can tell Langus is already way stronger than these clowns. Retin loses it, screaming at Zeke for the insult. Before things can get physical, the instructors call for everyone's attention. An adult dragon examiner steps forward to announce that the entrance exam is finally starting. Retin gives Zeke a final glare, promising to remember his face for later. Zeke just sighs, thinking the kids these days are way too short-tempered. Zeke realizes he probably would have been pissed too if someone told him a runt was stronger. Langus is actually surprised to learn that withdrawing is even an option. He kindly suggests Zeke might want to quit now to avoid getting himself hurt. Zeke can't help but chuckle. There's no way someone at his level could just walk away. The examiner explains the test. Just put a single scratch on one of the giant rocks. They're given 3 attempts, and weapons are provided if they don't want to use their bare hands. To Zeke, this sounds like a remarkably easy test. Compared to the insane rituals he went through in his past life, this is nothing. He looks at his number 1 tag, feeling pretty let down by the low stakes. The examiner shouts for the first group to begin. One boy puts everything he has into a massive swing against the stone. His sword shatters instantly, leaving his hands bloody, and the rock completely untouched. The other kids are completely stunned by how hard the rock actually is. The examiner is cold as ice, marking the first attempt as a failure and asking if they want to try again. But they don't even get a second chance. The kid is considered a forfeit and dragged off. The line keeps moving, and the next call starts sounding more like a death sentence. Rangus is shaking like a leaf, and Zeke's starting to wonder if the kid is actually going to make it. It's revealed these are regeneration stones that can fix any scratch in seconds. Zeke thinks the substance is a bit much, but Rangus explains the trick is in circulating ether. Zeke realizes this isn't about how good you are at fighting, but how well you control your power. He gets a thoughtful look, analyzing the situation differently now. Looking around, it's clear only a handful of kids have what it takes to pass. The numbers keep dropping, and the arena is filling up with kids who couldn't cut it. Disqualification after disqualification. This exam is basically a meat grinder for the unprepared. Finally, Zeke's number is called, and Rangus is still begging him to just walk away while he can. Zeke just heads for the center of the arena, telling his new friend not to worry. The official asks him to pick a weapon for his turn. Zeke just clenches his fist with a confident smirk, telling him it won't be necessary. Zeke walks toward the center of the training grounds. The instructor asks if he's really going to try this without a weapon. The other candidates start whispering. They're convinced that no matter how good he is with ether, bare fists won't do a thing. Rangus is in the stands, sweating. He's regretting not trying harder to stop Zeke from doing something so reckless. The examiner doesn't push it and gives the order to begin. Zeke sizes up the rock. He can tell this mineral is unlike anything he's ever seen, probably formed over 1,000 years. Rangus can't stay quiet and shouts out Zeke's name in a panic. Zeke isn't listening. He charges forward, his eyes glowing with power. He prepares the afterlife form of the Dragon Slayer combat technique. He slams his fist into the stone, creating a massive explosion of debris. As the dust settles, Zeke looks at the rubble and realizes that specific move might be a bit too advanced for his current body. He laughs it off, even though his arm is a bloody mess, and mutters that he clearly needs more training. The examiner is left speechless, staring at the destruction. Laika watches from the crowd, finding the whole display very interesting. Rangus is just staring, completely broken by what he just saw. The entire arena erupts in shock, while Zeke just stands there with a satisfied grin. The examiner is sweating. He knows only a 4-star rank should be able to smash a regeneration stone like that. He studies Zeke, recognizing the technique from somewhere, and wondering about the boy's lineage. Zeke walks up and asks for his results, while the guy is still trying to compose himself. He officially announces Zeke's pass, which doesn't seem to surprise Zeke at all. An assistant comes over and hands him a small green bottle as a reward. Zeke looks at it and wonders if this is really the best they can offer these days. Rangus tells him to just calm down. Rangus runs over, still babbling about how incredible it was that he destroyed the stone. Zeke shows him the reward, asking him what it actually is. Rangus is surprised Zeke doesn't know, explaining it's just a standard healing potion. Zeke takes a closer look. He was half expecting an actual elixir. Real elixirs are potions made from the rarest materials imaginable. They use herbs that only grow in hidden realms and pure elixir cores. They even use parts from divine beasts that are nearly impossible to find. Drinking one can heal old injuries in a heartbeat. Zeke decides to drink it anyway, and a green glow starts mending his shattered arm instantly. Rangus explains that the potions made by House Eldragon are famous for being way better than anything you can buy in a store. Zeke is genuinely impressed that his wounds are gone so quickly. Rangus tells him he's the more impressive one, though he notes there was no massive ether surge like you'd get from a real elixir. Zeke looks at the empty bottle, reflecting on a millennium of human wisdom. The exam moves on to the next candidates, with more names being called out. A few more students manage to pass, though they look like they've been through a meat grinder. Zeke watches them go, noting that their success was expected. Then, candidate 414 is called. Rangus starts heading down to the floor, shaking and trying to psyche himself up. Zeke shouts down to him, telling him he'll be fine and to just pull himself together. Rangus takes his position with his sword and the instructor signals him to begin. He lunges forward with a scream, putting everything he has into the strike. The impact sends him flying backward. The examiner tells him he's failed the first try, but has 2 more attempts. Rangus doesn't back down. He gets up and delivers a massive vertical slash that lights up the area. Rangus hits the dirt hard, gasping for breath after his second failed strike. The kids in the stands start howling with laughter, mocking him for failing despite his half-dragon blood. They keep jeering, sarcastically asking if this stronger student is really done already. Zeke just watches them, his expression unreadable. The examiner looks down at his clipboard, coldly asking if he's going to use his final attempt. Zeke steps forward and asks Rangus a simple question. Why didn't he just use a spear? Rangus looks up, bewildered, as Zeke tells him there's no point in swinging a weapon that doesn't fit him. The crowd thinks Zeke is an idiot, shouting that Rangus's father only ever taught him how to handle a sword. Zeke ignores the noise and asks the examiner if there's any rule against switching weapons mid-test. The guy says it's not an issue. Zeke turns back to his friend with a smile, telling him that's his green light. He asks Rangus if he's really okay with walking away after being humiliated like that. Rangus looks down at his hands, the weight of his father's expectations and the crowd's mockery pressing in on him. Finally, he looks up with a new light in his eyes and declares that he'll give the spear a shot. Rangus's father was an outsider, never permitted to enter the prestigious Dragon's Nest. People mocked the man, labeling him a fake, but he didn't let it stop him from raising his son with pride. Now, Rangus stands on the training grounds, determined to prove that his bloodline isn't just for show. He's clutching a spear but honestly has no clue what to do with it. Zeke gives him a pointer. Stop thinking so hard and just thrust the thing straight. The boy decides to trust him and readies himself for one clean strike. If someone like Zeke believes in him, then he figures he should start believing in himself too. He lunges forward with a shout, driving the spear into the target. The other candidates are already laughing, thinking a simple weapon change won't fix his lack of talent. Their smirks vanish when the spear doesn't just hit the rock, it pierces straight through. The bullies can't even find the words to describe the shock of seeing such a powerful hit from him. Even the instructors are stunned, noting that he didn't just scratch the surface, he completely impaled it. The announcement comes out. Rangus passed. He stands there in total disbelief for a second. Then, he loses it, jumping for joy and tackling Zeke in a massive celebratory hug. In the back, the losers try to cope by claiming it was nothing but dumb luck. That marks the end of the testing phase as the lead instructor calls the session to a close. With the trials over, it's time to move on to the official entrance ceremony. Rangus is a bit surprised that was it, but Zeke knows better than to think things will stay this easy. The heavy hitters of the Eldragon family finally make their appearance to address the new class. One man walks out radiating a chilling aura that immediately sets the whole mood to depressing. Zeke asks who the gloomy guy is, nearly giving poor Rangus a heart attack right then and there. The boy frantically tries to cover Zeke's mouth before he says something that gets them both in serious trouble. While everyone else is shaking, Zeke is calmly analyzing the family's forces, spotting several high-level fighters. This is Balza Eldragon, the current family head and a powerful 8-star warrior. Zeke recalls that 1,000 years ago, guys this strong were incredibly rare, making him wonder about the world's current power scale. Despite the man's status, Zeke decides he's not a fan, even after Rangus reminds him that's his own father. The crowd falls into a dead silence as Lord Balza prepares to deliver his opening remarks. He tells the kids to become the flesh and blood of the family, his dark energy practically suffocating everyone on the field. The pressure is so immense that the students buckle, gasping for air under the weight of his presence. Zeke just stares him down, sensing a deep-seated hatred in the man that he finds absolutely repulsive. An instructor tries to lighten the mood with a loud, fake laugh, praising the head's supposedly gracious words. He shouts for the young ones to strive for greatness as the crushing aura finally lets up. Next on the list are the dormitory assignments for all the new students. Rangus explains that the Dragon's Nest is split into 4 main dorms based on the cardinal directions. Everyone gets funneled into the north, south, east, or west buildings to start their new lives. Rangus's number is called up first, so Zeke tells him to take care as they split off. The east dorm looks more like a royal palace than a student bunkhouse. Zeke kicks the door to his new room open, offering a cheerful apology to whoever he's about to share the space with. Zeke stands by the table, while Rangus looks at him from across the room. Rangus gives a bright smile, happy to have made a new friend. He laughs, admitting he's been feeling pretty lonely lately. Rangus reminds Zeke they need to crash early since training kicks off first thing tomorrow. He mentions he was actually planning on ditching this place and going on a journey, but seeing things like that healing potion during the exam changed his mind. Zeke relaxes on his bed, thinking that staying with the family for a while might be a good way to see how much the world has changed. A full month passes by at the academy. The training is brutal, leaving most of the kids shaking as they struggle with heavy weights. The instructor screams at them to master the dragon's breath, a technique created by the family's 15th head. Some students are natural, like Laika, who already has ether practically overflowing from her body. Then, the instructor spots Zeke, and his expression changes. Zeke is effortlessly holding a massive boulder over his head with one hand, while the instructor wonders how he knows so much without a teacher. Zeke realizes the technique they're teaching is just a simplified version of his own Dragon King's breath. He reflects on how breathing techniques are just tools to pull ether from the air and move it through the body. It boosts ether levels, but the effectiveness all comes down to the user's own skill and creativity. The Academy's version is easy to learn, but Zeke finds it useless because you have to stand perfectly still to use it. His original Dragon King's breath is the only one that works while moving, though almost no one could master it. He simplified it 1,000 years ago to help the clan grow stronger, but he never expected it to survive this long. He's actually excited to see how other martial arts might have evolved over the centuries. Later, the students gather in the mess hall for a much-needed meal. Zeke digs into his food without a care in the world. He notices Rangus looks absolutely wiped out and asks him what's wrong. Rangus is slumped over, wondering how Zeke still has this much energy after that workout. Zeke just tells him he's weak and needs to eat more to keep up. Suddenly, Laika walks up to their table, looking pretty impressed with him. Zeke has no clue who she is, while Rangus nearly chokes on his drink in shock. Rangus frantically whispers that she's the head's daughter, but Zeke is completely unfazed. The poor kid is terrified they'll get in trouble just for talking to her. Laika confirms she knows he's the head's illegitimate son, her status as a candidate for the next head clearly stated. Zeke doesn't bother lying about it since it wouldn't change anything anyway. She demands to know how he's so strong he could smash a regeneration stone with his bare hands. When he says it's just because he's him, she gives a wide, sharp-toothed grin. She bursts out laughing and invites him to join her side. She offers to be his backer if he becomes her subordinate, assuming an illegitimate child like him is desperate for allies. She wants him to use that power to help her secure the position of the next head of the family. Zeke gives her a flat no thanks and goes right back to his lunch. He looks her dead in the eye and asks if she's really that obsessed with taking the head's spot. He can tell she's almost a 2-star and can project ether, which is actually impressive for her age. Zeke makes it clear he doesn't give a damn about family politics or the head's position. Laika slams the table in frustration, unable to believe he's turning her down. With a terrifying golden aura flaring up behind him, Zeke lets her know he's not about to serve anyone. Zeke looks her dead in the eye and tells her straight up that he's the strongest. Laika is frozen in place, her heart racing as she realizes she's actually intimidated by this guy. Rangis desperately tries to play peacemaker and get everyone to calm down, while Zeke just keeps eating his lunch. Laika isn't having it, screaming that she'll keep trying until she wins and demanding a fight right now. Word spreads fast through the halls that one of the head candidates is about to throw down at the training grounds. A crowd gathers as Zeke and Laika take their positions for an official duel. Rangus is still freaking out, asking if this is really a good idea, considering who she is. He points out that Zeke is technically the head's son, but Zeke is more confused about why his friend is suddenly acting so stiff. Rangus explains that Laika is a total prodigy who mastered the Typhona family's lightning sword arts when she was only 7. Zeke just shrugs it off, admitting he didn't know anything about her besides her being the head's daughter. He actually starts laughing, thinking that being in the dark just makes the whole thing a lot more exciting. Rangus is practically in tears, begging Lord Zeke to reconsider, though the sudden formal title just confuses the guy. Zeke looks over at his opponent and sees that she's clearly not playing around anymore. Laika draws her massive blade, telling them to cut the chatter and asking if he's finally ready to lose. Rain just runs off, yelling at Zeke to be careful as things heat up. Zeke just watches him go, wondering why everyone's so worried about him. Laika stands her ground, declaring that she'll be the one to claim the head seat and make Zeke serve her. Zeke is honestly just confused about why she's so hell-bent on fighting him. Laika mocks his ignorance, asking if he's clueless because of his illegitimate status. She explains that there are 5 heirs competing for the top spot, and all of them but him have royal blood. The 4 great houses are all ready to fight for control of the family's future. Zeke doesn't really care about the politics, it all just sounds way too complicated. Laika draws her sword, determined to secure her place as a candidate right now. She lunges forward with a massive swing, aiming to end this quickly. The ground shatters as her training blade slams down, but Zeke manages to step aside. The crowd is stunned by how fast she can swing a sword that massive. Spectators notice her power is sharp and steady, only getting faster with every move. Zeke just laughs it off, dodging her attacks with 0 effort. Laika is fuming. She can't believe she hasn't landed a single hit yet. Zeke notes that her style is unique and her speed is impressive for a 1-star rank. She tells him to shut his mouth and just focus on the fight. Zeke decides to show her what real speed looks like. He slips through her guard and delivers a direct strike. The impact hits hard, sending a shock through her entire body. Laika gasps for air, wondering how a fellow 1-star could possibly be this fast. Zeke stares her down, reminding her that rank isn't everything. He tells her bluntly that she simply can't keep up with him. He explains that he can read her every move, her breath, her muscles. even the way her eyes shift. To him, fighting her is just a matter of experience. Laika screams that he's being absurd and charges in again. Zeke effortlessly flips over her attack, landing behind her with ease. A massive cloud of dust kicks up from the impact of their clash. The onlookers are in total shock, wondering if their star people actually lost. Rangis is thrilled, but Zeke warns him that the fight isn't over yet. Zeke is actually impressed that she gathered enough power in her core to survive that hit. Laika stands back up, coughing through the dust and clutching her side. Zeke realizes she's managed to break through and reach the 2-star rank. The crowd spots the change immediately. It's the mark of a 2-star. She's projecting aura now, a sign of her power manifesting outside her body. Laika admits she owes this growth to him for pushing her to her limit. She strikes again, far faster than before, confident that he won't stand a chance now. Zeke's face lights up with a grin. He loves the sudden challenge. She sweeps her blade in a golden arc, pushing Zeke back for the first time. A small cut opens on Zeke's cheek as he barely avoids the full force of the blow. He's genuinely shocked. He was sure he had dodged that completely. Laika holds her sword steady, showing off the true extent of her new strength. Laika's eyes glow as she prepares her ultimate move, the True Thunder Spirit Greatsword Arts. Zeke is actually excited, realizing he's about to witness a martial arts style he's never seen before. A massive grin spreads across his face as he admits this is the absolute best. The Thunder Greatsword technique kicks things off with a blinding flash of energy. Zeke jumps through the sparks, trying to process what he's even looking at. He gets a close look at the energy, and realizes wielding actual lightning is just insane. Laika doesn't hold back, using her Divine Grid move to trap him in a cage of electricity. Zeke struggles to keep his footing, thinking that dealing with this power in his current state is going to be rough. He starts wondering if the gap between their star ranks really makes this much of a difference in a fight. Rangis watches from the sidelines, looking completely stressed out as Zeke gets cornered. The moment Laika reached 2-star rank, her Thunder Spirit techniques just completely exploded in power. She was fast before, but now she's moving on a whole different level. Zeke's actually enjoying this, thinking about how lightning manipulation like this didn't even exist back in his day. He could have countered, but he's too curious about this new energy to stop it now. Laika sees a smile and thinks he's just being a smug jerk, so she decides to turn up the heat. She lunges forward, determined to knock that grin right off his face. She drops a massive thunderclap strike right on top of him. To Zeke, she looks like a literal human lightning bolt coming down for the kill. The entire area explodes in a massive cloud of dust and debris. Rangis loses it, screaming Zeke's name as the smoke settles over the training ground. Another huge flash of electricity rips through the air. Rangis tries to rush out and stop her, but Laika isn't having it. She tells him that stopping now would be a total insult to Zeke. She raises her blade again, ready to end this with every last bit of her strength. She calls out her first secret art, Heavenly Thunder. A massive pillar of lightning slams down right on top of Zeke. Zeke is left lying in a smoking crater, looking like he's finally been defeated. Laika's sword stands stuck in the cracked earth as the dust finally settles. She calls the match, assuming she's definitely won this one. But then, a burst of yellow light starts glowing from the center of the crater. Laika spins around in shock, demanding to know how he's using her own element. Zeke stands up, his clothes in shreds, but his body surging with sparks. He's just as surprised as she is, admitting he has no clue what's going on either. He just laughs and shows off his new powers, proving he can play with lightning now too. He explains that while he was taking those hits, he was secretly using his Dragon King's breath. It turns out, her lightning energy reacted to his technique while it was active. Before he knew it, electricity just started building up inside his own body. Laika realizes his body must be some kind of rare anomaly to be able to absorb energy like that. And thanks to that reaction, Zeke has officially leveled up to a 2-star warrior himself. They go right back at it, clashing again with high-speed strikes. Zeke's moving like a blur now, dodging her attacks with zero effort. He thinks he's going to get the hang of this new power pretty quickly. Rangis watches in awe, realizing he's witnessing a battle between two legitimate heirs. He can see that even Laika's fastest lightning slashes can't reach Zeke anymore. Laika's getting frustrated now, asking Zeke if he's just mocking her. Zeke looks her right in the eye and admits he actually sees her as a real threat. He decides it's been a while, so he's going to try inventing a brand new technique right there in the middle of their fight. He gets himself ready, looking way too excited about making up a move on the fly. Laika is completely stunned, her sword still crackling with lightning as she tries to process what he just said. She starts spiraling, wondering if he was trained in secret arts or if he's just a genius who can create techniques in seconds. Before she can react, Zeke is already on her, his entire body glowing with intense golden light. He unleashes a new dragon-slaying art called Tempest of Thunder, slamming into her with the force of a storm. The dust settles, leaving Laika slumped on the ground with smoke rising from her uniform. Zeke stands over her with a grin, telling her that was honestly a fascinating fight. Laika is left trembling on the ground, unable to believe that she actually lost to him. She's devastated, reminding herself that her goal is to become the next head of the family no matter what. She thinks about her brothers and the title she has to claim, knowing she absolutely can't afford to lose like this. Zeke starts walking away, sounding genuinely happy about the joy of learning new things. He stops and holds a hand out to her, asking if this won't be the last time they fight. Laika can't help but blush as he calls out her name, promising they'll have a rematch soon. Zeke and Laika wrap up their spar. She's beat, but she's already down for another round whenever he is. She takes his hand, admitting that she was completely outclassed this time. A few hours later, deep inside a fissure, a swarm of monsters begins to crawl out from the darkness. Vanille Fafnerold Eldragon steps forward, unleashing a massive aura that looks like a dragon's shadow. He doesn't even break a sweat, using the first form of his dragon combat arts to wipe out the entire swarm. The guy walks through his own soldiers, like they're just part of the scenery. Alan approaches him with a report, catching him just as he's cooling down. She lets him know that Laika has officially moved up to the 2-star rank. Vanille barely reacts, asking her why that should even matter to him. Alan keeps going, mentioning that hitting 2-star at her age is a huge deal and she could easily hit 5-star by graduation. He shuts her down, saying talent is useless if you don't know how to wield it. If she's just wasting his time, she can leave. But then, Alan drops the real news. Laika was actually defeated. That gets his attention. He asks if she was fighting some upperclassman. Alan reveals it was actually Zeke, who's the exact same age as her. Vanille stops in his tracks. He remembers Zeke as the child of that one particular woman. He knows she had a gift for combat, but she's been dead since before Zeke was even born. He wonders who could have possibly taught the kid enough skills to take down a 2-star. He realizes Zeke hit that rank entirely on his own, without anyone showing him the ropes. Hearing that, he decides it's time to kick off the first trial. Alan is worried it's too early, since they've barely been in formal training for a month. Vanille doesn't care about their training time. In his eyes, if they can't survive the trial, they have no future in the clan. He stares off into the distance, labeling anyone who fails as completely unworthy. He gives the order to bring Freya back immediately. The fact that someone could beat Laika on their own has him genuinely curious. Freya is going to oversee the entire trial, and Vanille wants her to keep a very close eye on everything. He smirks, thinking things are finally starting to get interesting. The next day at the training grounds, the students are all working hard on their forms. Rangis is giving it his all, throwing punches with everything he's got. Then there's Zeke, who is casually balancing massive boulders on his shoulders while air sitting. He's practicing a body enhancement technique called Dragon's Breath, designed to be easy enough for even kids to learn. Rangis looks over and asks why he isn't actually training. Zeke just stares back, wondering what he's talking about. Zeke mentions he already mastered the dragon combat arts, which leaves Rangis completely stunned. He tells Rangis that his ether flow is completely off, and offers to show him the right way. Zeke has him turn around so he can fix the problem manually. With a single touch, Zeke sends a surge of energy through Rangis, making his skin glow. He explains that this is how you're supposed to channel the route. Rangis is so grateful he can barely find the words. Rangis can't believe he really mastered it that fast. Zeke asks if he actually doubted him for a second. Rangis thought it would be too simple and boring for someone who could beat Laika. Zeke disagrees, saying the stability of the technique is actually pretty impressive. He remembers back in his past life how his sons used to complain that this stuff was too difficult. The Dragon Slayer combat technique is made up of 4 complex forms that hold overwhelming power. Then there's the final form, the legendary move that was used to slay the divine dragon itself. Zeke is in high spirits, figuring that since he's got a handle on the dragon combat arts, he can go back to his usual workout routine. Seeing how far he's progressed, Rangis immediately jumps in and begs Zeke to keep training him. He's desperate to get even a little bit stronger, and Zeke doesn't see any reason to say no. Rangis is actually a bit stunned that Zeke agreed so easily, but the master just takes it in stride. Suddenly, Laika chimes in too, looking a little shy as she asks for some personal instruction herself. Rangis is floored that even someone as talented as Lady Laika wants help, but she's serious about it. She admits that her pride was completely crushed after their last encounter. Her goal is to get powerful enough to surpass her brothers, and maybe even one day, Zeke himself. Zeke goes quiet for a second, weighing her ambition while the two of them wait for his final word. Laika is still wrapping her head around things. Zeke is also a candidate to lead the family, so she can't understand why he'd be willing to train her his own rival. Zeke just crosses his arms. He doesn't mind, but he's more curious if she's actually okay, considering her injury should have kept her down for a month. She holds up a small bottle and shrugs it off. She used a healing potion, so she's perfectly fine, and thinks he's worrying about nothing. Raymond whispers to Zeke that those potions are just as ridiculous as ever. Zeke doesn't seem shocked. He tells Raymond that when it comes to Laika, nothing is really impossible. She asks him point blank if he's really going to be her instructor. She wonders if he shouldn't be spending that time on his own training instead. Zeke just laughs it off with a big smile. He says he'd never turn away an eager young talent. Laika and Raymond just stare at him. They're all the same age, after all. Regardless of the age gap, she's determined. She'll do whatever it takes to get stronger and claim that headship. Zeke is curious, though. He asks why she's so obsessed with that specific position. She explains the cold reality. If she doesn't become the head, her only path is a political marriage, either to a cousin or some man she's never even met. Zeke is stunned by the revelation. Laika explains that their bloodline is seen as too valuable. In the eyes of the great houses, they're just tools to be used however the family sees fit. Raymond looks sickened by the blatant greed of it all. This sends Zeke into a rage. He screams that he'll personally crush any custom that treats people like breeding stock. A loud voice suddenly commands their attention as officials approach the training ground. The lead instructor announces that a new teacher has arrived to guide them despite her incredibly busy schedule. A tall woman with long red hair steps forward, singling out Laika immediately. In a blur of speed, she's suddenly standing right in front of them. The kids scramble back in shock. She gives them a wink, impressed by their reflexes and the sharp aura they're giving off. The kids are spooked. They didn't sense her approach at all. The other instructors are full of praise, calling her movement exceptionally quick. She introduces herself as Freya Winkick, a 6-star member of the elite Black Dragon Corps. She turns her focus to Zeke, acknowledging his presence. Freya is a bit surprised that Zeke isn't intimidated. He just tells her there's nothing to be surprised about. Zeke's eyes glow as he analyzes her. He's found her skills quite intriguing. He notes her concealment is top tier, but it's her unique martial arts that really catch his interest. He watches the flow of energy through her legs, a complex pattern that makes her movement completely silent. Freya announces she'll be their instructor starting today. The lead instructor tells them to pay close attention, emphasizing how lucky they are to be taught by a 6-star pro. The students are nervous, wondering why someone of her caliber would bother teaching them. She confirms she'll teach them, but with one major condition. She'll only take them on if they can pass her specific test. She pulls out a crystal orb and explains the task. Spend 1 month on Poison Dragon Mountain. Raymond looks like he's about to faint at the name. Zeke, however, is just surprised to hear of the place again after so long. The mountain is notorious for its lethal environment, crawling with venomous beasts and toxic plants. Just a single scratch from a weed there is enough to kill an ordinary person instantly. Zeke remembers training there in his past life. He wonders if this is a bit too hardcore for kids their age. She lays out the rule. If that crystal orb breaks or goes missing during the month, they're disqualified on the spot. One of the kids asks what happens if they fail, and Freya bluntly tells them they'll be expelled. She explains they can manage the toxicity by controlling their breath, and as long as the orb is safe, they'll survive. Laika isn't convinced. She points out that the real problem isn't just the poison, it's the monsters lurking there. Freya bluntly tells them that if they want to survive, they better be ready to kill their enemies, otherwise they won't even find a scrap of food. She tells them not to panic just yet. They still have 5 full days of preparation before the actual test begins. During those 5 days, their task is to choose and master one of the L Dragon family's basic martial arts. But she warns them with a chilling smile. If they can't master it in 5 days, she won't be responsible for whatever happens to them. One kid asks if she'll step in to save them if they're in danger, and she just laughs at how adorable their naivety is. She reminds them that this is the L Dragon family, where the strong thrive and the weak are simply forgotten. Her philosophy is simple. The weak perish, so if they can't even clear a basic test, they can just enjoy an eternal nap in a bed of poison. Zeke stares at her, wondering when the family he built in his past life became so cold and heartless. Freya claps her hands, ending the lecture and telling everyone it's time to come up and pick the weapon manual they want. The students are overwhelmed, staring at the books like their lives depend on making the right choice, which they probably do. Langus is completely lost, so Zeke steps in and tells him to stick with the spear, since he's already familiar with it. Laika reaches for the greatsword basics, but Zeke immediately stops her. He points to a different manual, telling her that this is the one she actually needs to pick. She's surprised he's suggesting the axe, but he explains it'll cover the weaknesses she's currently showing. She decides to trust his judgment and agrees to go with the axe manual. Freya sees that everyone has finished their selection and gives them one final order: train like their lives depend on it. She makes it very clear that if they don't take this seriously, they're going to end up dead. The look on her face leaves the entire group frozen in absolute terror. Just as she's walking away, she remembers one more tiny detail about the test. She reveals that inner building senior students will also be out there, hunting them down to steal their crystal orbs. She gives them a playful wave and wishes them good luck, knowing full well the seniors will be coming at them with everything they've got. Raymond is losing it. Fighting monsters and poison was bad enough, but now they have to survive a hunt by upperclassmen too. Laika is worried too. Those seniors are all 2, star or higher, and even she'd struggle if they came at her in a group. Zeke suggests that if they can't handle the seniors alone, they should just form pairs or small teams to increase their odds. He points out that teaming up also makes hunting for food and monsters way easier. Raymond then asks Zeke what he plans to do. Zeke just gives a big, happy grin and says he's going to enjoy the challenge solo, of course. He heads off for some food before training, leaving his friends to realize that despite his talent, he's definitely a bit weird. 5 days pass in a flash of intense training. The students stand at the edge of a massive, shadowed forest, looking far more focused and ready than before. Freya looks at the group one last time and officially gives the order for the test to begin. Rangus is feeling the pressure. The exam is finally here. He wonders if it's really okay for a commoner like him to be on a team with a noble like Laika. Without a house crest, he's starting to second-guess himself. Celine and Raymond walk up to join the group. Celine is just as starstruck about the team-up as Rangus was. Raymond keeps a poker face, but he's ready to move. Laika tells them to knock it off. Status doesn't matter to her. She chose them for their strength. That's exactly what Rangus needed to hear to get fired up. Laika turns to Zeke and asks if he's really going into this solo. Zeke's lack of nerves is actually making the others more anxious. He doesn't see what there is to be worried about. In Zeke's eyes, their concern just proves they're a good fit for each other. He admits that Laika's group is looking pretty solid. She certainly has a sharp eye for talent. With the roles balanced out, Zeke is confident they'll pass without any trouble. The instructor arrives to address the gathered students. She notes that some of them are still pretty green when it comes to their weapons. The challenge is simple. Survive a month in the mountains while protecting a glowing orb. As long as you're holding one at the end, you pass. Since all the orbs are identical, there's a catch. The students quickly realize they can just steal orbs from each other. It's not just their peers. Upperclassmen will be hunting them for those orbs too. The seniors are already picking out the weak ones as easy targets. That's the end of the explanation. The exam officially starts, and the kids bolt into the forest. Laika tells Zeke to make sure he comes back in one piece. The instructor notices Zeke lagging behind and checks in on him. She asks if he's finally calmed his nerves now that the others have left. Zeke just smiles. He wasn't nervous to begin with. One of the guards thinks this test might be a bit extreme for new students. The instructor tells him to relax. It's under control. She explains that the monsters in the area aren't strong enough to stop kids working in groups. The guard takes her word for it, though he still looks unsure. But she's got a much bigger surprise planned for later. She plays dumb when the guard asks for clarification. Time's up. The upperclassmen are unleashed to start the hunt. She's eager to see who makes it out alive. Deep in the woods, an older student spots his first prey through the bushes. It's Zeke, walking through the forest like he's on a casual stroll. The guy thinks he's found the easiest orb of the day. An arrow flies straight for the back of Zeke's head. Without even looking back, Zeke reaches up and catches the projectile midair. Zeke breaks into a grin, holding the arrow he just snatched out of the air. He's actually been waiting for them to make their move. The seniors are completely stunned. This kid isn't scared at all. If anything, he looks excited. Before they can even process what's happening, Zeke lunges straight toward the group. He's clearly having the time of his life, daring them to come and play. Celine's on the move, but a giant tree frog is lunging at her from the foliage. She reacts instantly, driving her blade through the creature's head in a burst of light. But before she can breathe, another one of the beasts drops from a tree right behind her. Raymond steps in, his heavy shield catching the frog's tongue and slamming it back. He doesn't just block, he uses the momentum to crush the monster into the dirt. The group regroups, Selene looking a bit winded, while Raymond stands ready. Nearby, Laika stands over a literal mountain of the slain frogs, her greatsword resting on her shoulder. She flashes a peace sign, reminding everyone she's a proud 2-star warrior now. A week into the test, and the progress is insane. Selene and Raymond have officially hit 1-star status. The two of them glow with their new rank, finally feeling like they've earned their place. Selene encourages Rangus, telling him his turn to level up is coming soon. Even without a star yet, Rangus managed to take down one of those tree frogs solo, which is no small feat. He remembers Zeke's training, how flawless his spear work had become under that guidance. As the sun starts to set, Laika suggests they head back to base, but someone is already there waiting for them. A senior student steps out of the shadows, looking way too smug for his own good. He's here for their crystal orb, and he's clearly not asking nicely. He's a 1-star, and he thinks he's about to have an easy payday against some juniors. Laika isn't intimidated. She tells him to turn around and leave while he still can. The guy just smirks, revealing he didn't come alone. Suddenly, they're surrounded by a whole squad of upperclassmen. The lead senior lunges forward, telling them to just give up. Laika meets him head-on, sparks flying as their blades collide. It's chaos. She orders the team to hold the line while she deals with the leader. Rangus finds himself cornered, his spear barely keeping the enemies at bay. They mock him, demanding the crystal while they hammer away at his defense. In the heat of the moment, he remembers a conversation with Zeke. He had asked his mentor how someone like him could ever beat a stronger opponent. Zeke's answer was blunt. If the gap was too big, the only option was to give up. But for 1 or 2 stars? Those are within reach. Zeke explained that most of these seniors aren't actually that much stronger than they are. The secret wasn't about raw power. It was about enduring waiting for that one split second where the enemy gets cocky. Unless they're fighting a freak of nature like Laika, a 2-star opponent is totally beatable. Ranges had been doubtful, his lack of confidence holding him back. Zeke told him to stop overthinking and just trust the process. Back in the present, Rangus focuses, watching the senior's erratic movements. He takes hit after hit, his spear parrying just enough to keep him alive. He grits his teeth, knowing he just needs to wait for that one opening. The senior leaps into the air, screaming for Rangus to go down. That's it. The senior left himself completely wide open. Rangus doesn't hesitate. He drives his spear straight through the gap, ending the fight in one clean strike. Rangus stands over his fallen foe, staring at his hands in disbelief. A bright light pulses from his uniform. He's finally earned his very first star. Nearby, the senior leader is getting absolutely slammed, screaming about the impossible gap in their strength. Laika realizes Zeke was right about training in axe techniques to add more weight to her sword strikes. Lightning surges around her as she closes in, telling her opponent his luck ended the moment he targeted them. She delivers a final thunderous blow that puts an end to the fight once and for all. Once the dust clears, the group checks in on each other, standing tall over the defeated upperclassmen. Rangus is absolutely beaming, the realization that he really did it finally sinking in. Celine and Raymond rush to congratulate him on his first star, and the young spearman is moved to tears. With her side finished, Laika looks off into the distance, wondering how Zeke is faring. Somewhere else in the woods, an upperclassman is having a complete breakdown, begging something to stay away. He's staring at Zeke, who stands calmly among a pile of defeated seniors, like some kind of monster. The seniors are scrambling through the woods, screaming for someone to save them. Zeke Eldragon stands in the center of the chaos, his eyes glowing as he mocks the fleeing students for losing their courage. They can't believe the tables have turned. The upperclassmen were supposed to be the hunters, but now they're the ones being hunted. Zeke towers over a fallen student, his eyes flashing red as he tells him to stop being pathetic and fight back. His gaze is cold and predatory, showing an intensity that shouldn't belong to a kid his age. The senior is completely broken, trembling in fear at the monster standing before him. Zeke just sighs at the sight. They were talking big at the start, but now they've completely lost their nerve. He glances toward the bushes, noticing a presence watching him from the shadows. One of the instructors is hunkered down in the brush, sweating as he wonders what Zeke actually is. The observer slips away from the pile of defeated students to go deliver his report. Back at the camp, Freya Wingkick listens as the instructors provide the latest updates. They report that while 30% of the 7-year-olds have already dropped out, the ones remaining are adapting quickly. Freya nods, then asks how the upperclassmen are doing. The instructor doesn't sugarcoat it. To put it bluntly, they're all running away. Freya is confused. There shouldn't be anything on the mountain strong enough to make them flee. The instructor reveals that Zeke is the one chasing them down. The boy is systematically hunting the seniors, and the instructors have never seen anything like it. Freya realizes he's gone beyond the level of a prodigy. He's a monster. He purposefully moved alone because he never saw himself as the prey. He was the hunter all along. She recalls Zeke's strange behavior earlier, and it all finally starts to make sense. The rest of the staff can only watch in silence as they process the realization. Nearby, a massive, chained-up cage is wheeled into position under Freya's supervision. The instructors are panicked, knowing the creature inside is a 3-star threat. Freya just laughs, claiming they've adjusted it to only target those who are 2-star rank or higher. She reassures them that the normal kids shouldn't be in any real danger. When questioned, she reveals the order to release this beast came straight from the head of the house. Inside the dark cage, a pair of red eyes glow. It's time to see if Zeke can handle a real monster. Freya gives the final command to release it at dawn. Over with Zeke's squad, Rangus stops as the ground begins to shake. Laika clenches her jaw, getting a bad feeling that the upperclassmen might be back. Rangus wonders if it's just a large monster, like an anger boar, but Laika isn't so sure. Suddenly, the forest is filled with the sound of snapping wood. Laika screams for everyone to move as a massive tree comes crashing down. Selene and Laika scramble back, looking up in horror at the giant that just appeared. A massive stone golem with glowing red eyes steps into the clearing, towering over the kids. Zeke Eldragon sits atop a pile of defeated monsters, looking completely bored with the lack of a challenge. He watches the instructors from a distance, realizing there's no one left in the area who can actually give him a decent fight. Suddenly, a strange presence catches his attention, something much stronger than the usual training fodders lurking nearby. Meanwhile, the red-haired instructor and her team are watching from the shadows, clearly orchestrating something behind the scenes. Zeke catches on to their plan and breaks into a wicked grin, finally finding an excuse to enjoy himself. He takes off at a sprint toward the 3-star class area, not about to miss out on the action. In another part of the forest, Marin charges forward with her sword drawn. She lands a strike on a massive stone golem, but her blade just bounces harmlessly off its rocky hide. Raymond watches in horror as their best efforts don't even leave a scratch on the monster. The golem retaliates, forcing the group to scramble as it shatters the ground beneath them. Laika drops in from above, her sword crackling with lightning as she lands a thunderflash strike. She quickly realizes that this beast is meant for high-rank fighters and is far beyond their current level. Edges panics, looking to Laika for any kind of instruction as the giant looms over them. She tells the group to run while she stays behind to draw its attention. She explains that her most powerful aura attack barely managed to crack its arm. They're completely outmatched. Laika warns that they'll only slow her down if they stay, but the team isn't ready to abandon her. Raymond steps forward, shield raised, determined to support her despite the danger. Marin and Edges join him, deciding that they'll take on the monster as a unit. Raymond gives a confident nod, finally finding his nerve. Fired up, the group coordinates their next move, asking for everyone to back them up. Laika charges back into the fray, lightning surging through her sword once more. Raymond takes a direct hit from the golem's massive fist, his shield groaning under the pressure. Marin and Edges strike simultaneously, distracting the beast while Laika prepares her finishing move. She unleashes Heavenly Thunder, a colossal blast of electricity that engulfs the golem. As the dust settles, Laika collapses to her knees, leaning on her sword for support. Raymond and the others rush over, checking to see if she's okay after that massive discharge of energy. The team prepares to head back to base, thinking the battle is finally won. But the golem isn't down. It lunges from the smoke and grabs Laika in its massive hand. She realizes she let her guard down too soon as the monster prepares to crush her. Edges and the others watch helplessly as the golem raises its other fist to finish them off. Suddenly, a massive tree trunk comes flying through the air like a projectile. The tree slams directly into the golem's head, pinning the giant to the earth. The group stares in shock, wondering what on earth could have hit the monster with that much force. Zeke comes bounding out of the trees, looking like he's just finished a light workout. He gives a cheery salute, laughing as he dismisses the terrifying monster as nothing more than a clay doll. A massive bolt of lightning tears through the sky, and Zeke realizes things are taking a turn for the worse. He sprints through the forest, thinking about how his prime self would have covered this distance in a heartbeat. Laika's team is backed into a corner by a 3-star opponent, and Zeke wonders how much longer they can hold out. The boy leaps from the trees, closing the gap between them and the threat. He charges toward the source of the commotion, navigating the dense forest at full speed. He recalls the basic combat manuals given to the kids before the test, just like the Dragon Slayer technique booklets. These basic arts trace back 1,000 years to the legendary first head of the Eldragon family. Zeke finally reaches the group and casually asks if everyone is holding up okay. Rangus is in a total panic, pointing frantically at the massive threat lurking just ahead. A stone golem towers over them, possessing a heavy presence, but absolutely no life force. He walks right up to the monster, checking out its rock-hard shell with a smirk. Laika and Rangus can't believe how reckless he's being, but for him, this is already getting boring. The golem doesn't waste any time, bringing down a massive fist with surprising speed. Zeke keeps his cool and tells the kids to stay back, warning them that things are about to get dangerous. The group takes the hint and hauls it out of there while the golem continues its assault. The protagonist ducks under a swing and prepares to go on the offensive. He clenches his fist, wanting to see if the monster's insides are just as tough as its shell. Zeke lunges forward, activating the first form of the Dragon Destroyer combat arts. Instead of trying to smash the exterior, he uses a burst to flood it with power and rupture it from within. The golem is reduced to a pile of rocks, and the boy is satisfied that his theory worked. A month passes, and the scene shifts to the massive Eldragon main residence. Zeke isn't thrilled about being summoned, wondering why he's the one catching heat after the test. The 1-month trial had ended without any further major incidents after the golem attack. Conditions on the mountain were brutal, and his class saw its numbers drop to 70%. But the survivors came out stronger, with many of them managing to reach 1-star rank. As the red-haired instructor leads him through the palace, Zeke wonders what the head of the family could possibly want. She doesn't hold back, telling him he brought this on himself with his behavior during the exam. The instructor explains that the upperclassmen's test was to attack the juniors and steal their crystal orbs. But thanks to Zeke, they didn't get a single one, and now the entire group has to retake the whole test. She warns him to drop his casual tone before he stands before the Lord Head. Zeke reaches the massive red doors of the main hall, ready for whatever's waiting inside. Freya warns Zeke to watch his mouth, because the Lord doesn't have a problem with killing a child who steps out of line. She's dead serious, one wrong move and it's game over for him. Zeke doesn't seem to care, even though Freya is clearly stressed out just being near the place. Freya reports to the guards outside the massive double doors of the office. She leads Zeke inside, both of them walking into the lion's den. She formally announces that she's brought him as ordered. Vanille sits at his desk, looking every bit the cold and untouchable leader. He immediately grills Zeke about why he decided to attack an upperclassman. Zeke just shrugs it off, asking if he was supposed to just let them walk all over him. He points out the only rule was to survive, so he did what he felt like doing. Freya is practically vibrating with anxiety next to him. Suddenly, Vanille releases a suffocating aura that takes the form of a massive red dragon. The pressure is so heavy that Freya can barely stand, but Zeke stays perfectly calm. He even tells her to stop being so easily rattled by it. Zeke asks if he was called here just for boring questions, so Vanille shifts to asking how he actually gained such power. Vanille mentions the reports of him beating upperclassmen and even taking down a golem. He wonders how a bastard child like him could possibly be this strong. Zeke just gives a smug grin and says it's because he's just being himself. Vanille calls him insolent, but surprisingly offers him a reward for the golem kill. Freya is shocked that he's actually getting rewarded after showing that much disrespect. He's given a choice: a legendary item from the treasury, or access to the secret archives. The Dragon Hall stores forbidden books and ancient knowledge that's been lost to the world, while the treasury is filled with mythical weapons and rare elixirs collected over 1,000 years. These places are strictly restricted, and only the elite are ever allowed inside. Naturally, Zeke asks why he can't just have both if it's supposed to be a reward. Vanille has zero patience for that and just tells him to leave. Freya doesn't wait for a second order and drags Zeke out before he makes things worse. She's thrilled that he even got a reward, but Zeke is already over it. As they walk away, Zeke turns back to give Vanille some unsolicited advice. He tells him that as long as he keeps killing his emotions like that, he'll never reach true strength. Vanille watches him go, his dragon aura flaring up with intense pressure. Zeke wonders about the sheer presence the guy was putting off. Meanwhile, Freya is back to screaming at him for almost getting them both killed. Zeke just brushes it off, saying he simply couldn't hold back his thoughts. He even casually mentions that Vanille is his real parent, which stops Freya in her tracks. She realizes this kid is definitely not an ordinary child. Zeke just smiles and repeats his mantra: he is who he is. Freya thinks about how the Lord's power comes from a superior Dragon King and should be impossible to defy. Yet Zeke stayed completely calm, which is honestly pretty terrifying. She asks what his final choice is, and Zeke jokes about taking both again. He stands in front of the massive estate, finally settling on his choice. He picks knowledge, eager to see the tools and medicines developed while he was idle for 7 years. Ranjis asks if the reward is really worth all the hype. Zeke is all for it, saying this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to learn some serious martial arts. But Ranjis reminds him they've only got a limited amount of time before they're kicked out. Laika explains the rules. You can only borrow one book to take home, but you're free to read anything while you're inside. She double-checks to see if Zeke really wants the library over the treasury. Zeke admits he thought about the gear, but he feels like knowledge is way more important right now. Laika points out that the stuff on the second floor is way more advanced than anything they've ever seen. Raymond just laughs, bragging that his own greatsword technique is already the best there is anyway. Just then, the guard steps out and announces they've only got 5 hours to finish. 5 hours might seem like a while, but they've got a lot of ground to cover. Laika's plan is to grab the one book they're taking home first, then spend the rest of the time reading everything else. As the massive doors open, they're hit with the sight of a library that looks like it goes on forever. Celine is completely in awe as they finally set foot inside the legendary Dragon Hall. Zeke walks in alone, looking around the massive room and wondering if any of this ancient knowledge can actually still surprise him. Zeke Eldragon is losing it in the middle of the library. He's buried in a book, sweating buckets because there's just way too much new info to process. He collapses on the floor, stunned that a whole millennium has passed and his world is now linked to another one. 900 years ago, a dimensional rift called the Chaos Realm opened up. Monsters poured out, but the people fought back using a special primal energy. 4 legendary warriors married into the Eldragon house, becoming the ancestors of the current great families. Zeke realizes this, explains the weird dark haze he saw on the boar and Laika's thunder aura. He stays glued to the pages, realizing he's actually reading about things from another world. Then he finds something called magic, a technique he's never seen before. His eyes light up with pure excitement as he realizes there's a whole new power system to explore. Suddenly, a stern voice tells him to shut up and keep it down. Zeke looks around, spooked because he can hear the voice clearly but can't sense anyone nearby. He sits back, annoyed that he can't feel any special power other than standard primal energy. But then, books start swirling through the air all around him. He watches in awe as threads of aether guide the objects with perfect precision. He's completely hooked now, begging to see more of this incredible technique. Before he can react, glowing golden threads wrap around him like a spiderweb. The library is closing, and Zeke is being forcibly evicted by the unseen librarian. He gets tossed straight out the front doors and hits the pavement. He skids to a stop, his mind still racing about that mysterious magic. Zeke yells back at the library that he's not done yet, just as his friends catch up to him. Laika asks why he's being thrown out like trash, but he just wants to know what they found. Ron just proudly shows off a manual for the Cloudwater Spear technique. Celine holds up her new Wind Blossom Sword manual with a satisfied smile. Edges joins in, showing that he picked up some Guardian Shield tactics while he was in there. Zeke just laughs, thinking about how he actually created all these techniques for fun in his past life. He turns to the last one and asks Laika what she managed to find. She shows him the Heavy Wave Greatsword manual, which was apparently revised by the legendary 15th Lord. Zeke can't believe it, everyone's out here training with the stuff he made centuries ago. He looks up at the hall, remembering all the original versions and improvements he left behind. He stares at a portrait of his past self, realizing his legacy is still the foundation of their strength. He smiles, admitting to himself that this school life isn't as boring as he expected. As he walks away, he's actually starting to look forward to what's coming next. Fast forward 5 years, and the academy has definitely changed the group. Rongus calls out to Laika as they head toward the training grounds. Laika has grown up quite a bit, now 12 years old, and much more focused. The whole squad is out in the courtyard, training hard with their chosen weapons. And right in the middle of it all is Zeke, now 12 and looking sharper than ever. In a grand, sunlit office, a high-ranking official asks for absolute confirmation on a recent discovery. The commander of the Black Dragon Corps, Ein, confirms that their investigation shows an 80% chance of magic water existing inside a new rift. Gilliam Eldragon leans on his hand, frustrated that such a valuable resource appeared in such an inconvenient location. Legend says that anyone who drinks this water becomes a mage, gaining a body that can convert source power into pure magic. While these magic springs revolutionized the world's combat techniques, they also sparked fierce territorial wars. The Eldragon family is at a disadvantage, as not a single natural spring exists within their borders. For a house without a spring, the only way to obtain magic water is by conquering a special rift. Currently, the clan only has a few mages, and they're all seasoned veterans who survived those very rifts. The abundant Dragon Forest location is the real headache, especially with the recent border clashes in the area. Most of the forest is Eldragon land, but a chunk of it spills over into another house's domain. That would be the Cerberus House, a group the commander thinks of as nothing more than hounds. Even if the rift is in Eldragon territory, its sheer scale makes things complicated. The map shows the rift's magical zone bleeding into Cerberus territory, and Ain is certain they'll come swarming in. They need to prepare for a serious territorial dispute. Because it's a special rift, both sides will have limited moves, but they need to be ready. Gilliam decides they have to act before their rivals catch on to the situation. He orders the commander to notify every dragon's nest they're holding a selection trial to find the right people for the job. Laika watches the announcement unfold from the academy grounds, sensing the tension. Meanwhile, Zeke is busy training his team, having them unleash their best arts against him all at once. He stands in the center of the storm, blocking every strike with zero effort. A spear tip nearly grazes him, and Zeke just smiles, complimenting the attack. He tells Ranjus he's tensing up too much, which is ruining the natural flow of the spear technique. He turns to Celine next, warning her that focusing only on speed means her power isn't carrying through. Raymond, however, gets a nod for doing a pretty good job. Zeke tells them they're still too defensive and need to get used to actually attacking. Laika watches from the side, thinking it's pure madness to take these attacks head-on without using any source power. Zeke ignores the chatter and orders them to go again, treating the whole thing as a serious lesson. He flexes, showing off how their bodies have become sturdy enough to handle the pressure even without magic. Laika just facepalms, wondering why the kids are so willing to keep running into Zeke's attacks. Celine and Raymond are exhausted, baffled by how they can have this much defense with just physical training. Laika tells them not to compare Zeke to humans the seniors used to call him the monster prodigy for a reason. Zeke asks if she's there to join the training, or if she actually has a reason for showing up. She skips the training offer and reveals that they'll be meeting kids from all the other nests very soon. The news catches Rongus completely by surprise. Celine asks if this is for the next exam, but Laika isn't sure of all the details yet. Zeke wonders where she even picks up info like that, and she says it's easy if you just watch the instructors. Zeke admits he never pays attention to rumors, prompting Laika to call him an embarrassing candidate for the head of the house. She tells him to be careful regardless. She mentions there's another next head candidate in the West Wing they need to look out for. Zeke just smiles, saying he's looking forward to it. A few days pass, and the students gather on the training grounds. Everyone has been gathered regardless of grade for the trial they talked about before. The red-haired instructor takes the stage, her presence immediately silencing the massive crowd as she tells everyone to shut their mouths. Once she has their full attention, she announces that the trial will officially kick off in 3 days. Laika and her teammates look on in shock as the instructor explains they'll be fighting the best students from every other dragon's nest. While Rangus looks like he's about to have a heart attack, Zeke just stands there with a confident smirk, clearly looking forward to the challenge. Vanille announces that in 3 days, the students will be facing off against the children from the other dragon nests. The news hits like a bombshell, as this kind of competition usually only happens at graduation. The sudden change has everyone on edge. Vanille won't give them the full story, but she promises a special mission for whoever manages to survive the match. Zeke is immediately intrigued. A mission high stakes enough to force a brawl between halls sounds right up his alley. The rules are simple. Each hall sends 7 fighters in a winner-stays-on format. The deadline is today. Vanille wants their list of 7, and the top-year students are already acting like it's a closed group. The seniors don't waste any time mocking the younger kids, dismissing them as useless before the conversation even starts. They clearly view anyone below their grade as a weakling who would only get in the way of a real fight. Rick makes it official, shouting that the 7 spots are reserved for the seniors and expecting no objections. Laika stands up and throws a wrench in his plan, loudly objecting to the seniors hogging all the slots. Rick treats her like a confused child, condescendingly explaining that strength is the only factor that matters here. She meets his arrogance with a massive flare of energy, ready to prove exactly where she stands. The crowd is floored. Word was she was barely a 2-star, but the aura she's putting off is clearly at the 3-star level. Laika challenges the seniors to name even 7 people in their class who are actually stronger than her. When they can't find the words, she tells them to stop the talk and open the selection to the lower years as well. As Rick starts to snap back, Zeke casually cuts in and tells him he's being way too noisy. The senior is paralyzed by the sheer audacity of this lower-class kid speaking to him that way. Zeke offers a simple way out, a battle royale where they keep fighting until only 7 people are left standing. He can already see the sparks flying as the hall turns into a battlefield for the trial. Laika loves the idea of preliminaries for volunteers and asks the seniors if they have the guts to agree. Even though Vanille thinks it's a waste of time, she gives them the green light to proceed. Laika makes sure Zeke is in, and he gives her a confident nod. Of course he's joining. Then he drops the bomb on his own team, telling Rangus, Selene, and Raymond that they're all going to be participating. The trio looks like they've seen a ghost. They can barely wrap their heads around the idea of fighting seniors. Selene is on the verge of a breakdown, the mental pressure of the upcoming trials already weighing her down. Zeke doesn't let up, telling them that fighting people above their level is the best way to see the results of their training. He crosses his arms, eager to see if these seniors are actually worth the hype, or if they're all just talk. Zeke stands with his sword slung over his shoulder, sighing about how much of a pain it is to deal with kids being selfish. Raymond, Selene, and Rangus are sweating bullets as they watch the competition, feeling like they're completely outclassed. Zeke looks over at his terrified squad and asks what they're so worried about. They remind him they're about to fight top-tier 3rd years with 3 stars. He points out that they've been training under him for 5 years straight, which isn't exactly a small feat. He tells them to stop the negative self-talk and actually have some faith in the work they've put in. Their opponent suddenly shouts at them to stop yapping and get over there so he can put them in their place. Other students watch from the safety of the balconies, wondering what's actually going on down there. They're stunned to see the 3-star student flat on his face while Rangus stands over him, making everyone wonder if the top tier has gotten soft. Zeke just gives a satisfied nod, telling them all they did a great job. Rangus is a completely different fighter now, sharp and focused, as he deflects every attack and waits for an opening. Selene is just as impressive, handling the multi-strike Windflower style with a level of skill she didn't have before. Raymond isn't missing a beat either, switching between his shield and his swordplay with perfect timing. Even Laika has reached a new level, her speed and power leaving her opponents unable to keep up. She stands over her fallen target, casually noting that this was about what she expected from them. Another 3-star student points a trembling finger, screaming that it shouldn't be possible for them to lose to lower-ranked kids. Zeke walks right up to him, unimpressed that he's still running his mouth after getting beat. He explains that things like age and the number of stars on a uniform are just indicators, not a measure of real strength. The guy loses it, yelling that stars are power and calling Zeke a brat who doesn't know how the world works. Zeke's eyes take on a terrifying glow as he reminds the guy that everyone dies the same way if you just destroy their heart. The student is suddenly terrified, sweating as he asks who this kid even is. Zeke says he's done talking, it's just the 2 of them left, and he wants to see what kind of martial arts the guy has actually mastered. He invites him to show just how much training he's really done. Screaming for Zeke not to underestimate him, the student charges in with a great strength fist technique. Zeke meets the attack head-on, delivering a hit that leaves the guy gasping for air. The impact sends the student flying across the dirt as the wind from the strike kicks up a massive cloud of dust. Zeke just turns around with a thumbs up and a big grin, telling his team they trained well. Laika gives him a look, pointing out that he said that before he even saw the guy hit the ground. Meanwhile, the West Wing training grounds are a mess of groaning students and broken weapons. Vanille Fafnirld Eldragon is casually sitting on top of one of his defeated opponents, calling them all useless. His aide, Alan, stands by as he announces that the selection process for this wing is officially over. Among the few still standing is Retin, who looks ready for whatever comes next. Vanille is intrigued, noticing that Retin is only a lower classman, but already has 3 stars. He tells Retin he likes people who can actually get things done, and offers to make him a subordinate. Retin immediately drops to one knee and bows, deeply honored to have been acknowledged by someone as powerful as Vanille. Vanille is convinced that as long as he's in charge, the West Wing is untouchable. He's already looking ahead, focusing on getting results in the upcoming special mission. Retin watches him with a smirk, sure that Vanille is the one who will eventually lead the entire family. He's practically gloating, thinking about how he's going to be a direct subordinate to the future head. Alan interrupts his thoughts, telling Vanille there's something he needs to hear. She whispers the news that Laika will be joining the team for the East Wing. Vanille's expression sours immediately as he rubs his head, calling her a meddlesome brat who's always in the way. He eventually just walks off with a shrug, saying it doesn't matter because his side is winning no matter what. He snaps his bladed fan open with a sharp click, determined to show his brothers that he's the one truly in control. Looking back with a cold, arrogant smirk, Vanille declares that the seat of the next family head is already his. The arena is overflowing with spectators from across the various halls. Rangis is completely overwhelmed by the sheer number of people gathered in one place. Laika notes that despite the crowd, many were already weeded out during the entrance exam. Rangis thinks about the pseudo-dragons who failed men like his own father. She tells him to be proud, since they were the ones chosen to represent the East Hall. Nearby, Zeke stays quiet while mentally measuring the combat strength of every student in the area. A student suddenly shouts out, in total admiration of Zeke's incredible power. The atmosphere around the group has clearly shifted after the previous events. 2 students from the upper-class selection squad rush toward them with excitement. The boy tells Zeke that his last fight completely changed the way they view the world. Despite their own low standing, they admit they have nothing but respect for true strength. Zeke admits that the sudden display of respect is a bit unexpected. He refocuses his attention, noting that almost every candidate present is a 3-star warrior. His eyes scan the crowd, looking for anyone who might have already pushed past that limit. Suddenly, a blonde woman pounces on Laika, wrapping her in a massive hug. Sandy asks if anyone has been bullying her cousin or giving her a hard time. The rest of the group is left confused until Laika introduces the newcomer. This is Sandy Tuporna, the daughter of a prestigious family head from the 4 great houses. Realizing they're in the presence of high nobility, the kids can't help but feel a chill. Sandy asks who these commoners are, and Laika happily calls them her friends. The noble lady isn't impressed by the idea of making friends with lower-ranked students. She openly questions if they have enough talent to actually stand by a future househead. Zeke speaks up, telling her that their true skill will only be clear once they fight. Sandy turns her cold gaze toward him and asks for his name. When she hears it, she realizes he's the rumored illegitimate child of the main bloodline. She remarks that she's surprised someone like him has even managed to survive this long. Laika tries to interject, but Sandy doesn't care about being rude to an illegitimate son. She mocks the low quality of the East Hall, noting that his companions aren't even 3-star class. Zeke warns her that looking down on others is a fast way to trip yourself up later. Infuriated by the talk, Sandy demands to know how he dares to speak back to her. He just shrugs it off, calling it a simple bit of advice. Before things can escalate, a tall student steps in and tells her to stop making a scene. Aegis Fanblade, the representative of the North Hall, makes his presence known. Sandy tells him to stay out of it, but Aegis points out the selection match is about to begin. A pillar of energy signals for every student to pay attention to the main stage. Teach Mentric, the captain of the Gold Dragon Order, appears to kick off the event. The instructor kicks things off by laying out the ground rules. Every battle in this selection match will be a straight-up one-on-one duel. Each hall brings 7 participants to the table, and the goal is simple. The first side to rack up 4 victories takes the whole thing. Once the predetermined order of fighters is set, that's it. There's no swapping people out later to try and counter the opposition. The officer warns them that their order of participation is a major part of their strategy, so they'd better think carefully before committing. He adds one last detail. Everyone selected for these matches is being handed a special mission with some massive stakes. This task is of huge importance to the Eldragon family, and anyone who pulls it off is making a major contribution to the clan's future. For these young warriors, that kind of contribution is a fast track toward the ultimate goal, the position of family head. It's time to decide the matchups, and each hall's representative has to step forward to draw a stone from the box. Vanille Fafnir Eldragon, the representative for West Hall, steps up first with that typical cold, arrogant look on his face. He pulls a stone from the box, looking completely bored by the process, as he holds it up for the official to see. The instructor dismisses him immediately, and Vanille turns back to his team without saying a word. Leica watches him walk away, her expression tightening as she recognizes the threat he represents. Zeke asks if she knows him, and she confirms he's the elite candidate for the next head she warned him about before. She points out that Vanille isn't just strong on his own. The entire West Hall is packed with elite warriors who mean business. Zeke just gives a relaxed smirk, acknowledging that while West Hall is dangerous, the other halls have clearly been training hard too. But one face in particular catches his eye, a student he hasn't seen in a long time. He remembers this guy as a standout during the entrance exam, reaching 3-star rank at an age that's pretty much unheard of. Zeke admits the kid must have trained like crazy to get that far so quickly. In the stands, some students are staring in absolute disbelief, wondering why a loser is standing with the representatives. They start pointing and shouting, mocking Rangis for being in a place where they think he doesn't belong. Rangis flinches at the insults, his confidence visibly crumbling as he stares down at the ground. Leica asks if he's okay, and he tries to stutter out that he's fine, even though his face says otherwise. The instructor moves the ceremony along, calling for the North Hall representative to step forward and draw. Next, it's the South Hall representative's turn to pull a stone and see who they'll be facing. Finally, they call for the East Hall representative, and Leica immediately points at Zeke as their pick. Zeke tries to dodge the responsibility, suggesting that the younger students should be the ones leading the charge for once. Leica isn't having any of it, reminding him they're the same age before basically shoving him toward the stage. Sandy is straight up offended, yelling about why they're sending an illegitimate child like Zeke instead of someone like Leica. Leica doesn't miss a beat, telling her sister that Zeke is going because he's simply the strongest one among them. Sandy is fuming, convinced that, at this rate, her sister is going to lose her claim to the position of family head. Leica just gives a confident little grin, totally unfazed by her sister's dramatic outburst. The officer tells representatives to pour their source power, their ether, into the stones they drew to reveal the pairings. As they channel their energy, the stones start glowing with different colors, deciding the fate of each hall. Zeke holds up his stone as it pulses with a bright blue light, looking completely calm about what's coming next. The official announces the first matchup, East Hall versus North Hall. That leaves the second match to be played out between West Hall and South Hall. The North Hall fighter steps out, and the guy is an absolute mountain of a man compared to everyone else. Leica's group stares in horror, wondering if that guy is even legally allowed to be a student in a match like this. But Leica has her own problems to worry about, realizing she's slated to face her sister Sandy in the very first duel. Sandy looks her dead in the eye, claiming this is the perfect chance for Leica to finally wake up to reality. She points a finger at her sister, promising to crush her until she remembers exactly what her place and purpose are in the clan. Leica doesn't flinch, her eyes sparking with lightning as she tells her sister to just bring it on. Edges, the North Hall representative Zeke recognized earlier, approaches with a surprisingly friendly smile, holding up his own matching blue stone. He tells Zeke he's genuinely looking forward to their fight, and Zeke agrees, feeling like the two of them are definitely going to get along. The two of them stand face to face in the middle of the amphitheater, both grinning with a mix of mutual respect and an intense eagerness to see who's truly stronger. As the crowd watches, Zeke admits he can hardly wait to let the battle begin. The crowd is roaring as the first match between East Hall and North Hall is announced. Rick is shaking with nerves, trying to convince himself he can actually take this win. Alan and Zeke can see the kid is about to pop from the pressure. The instructor steps up, checking to see if both fighters are ready for the opening bell. He gives the signal, and the fight is officially on. Rick charges forward with a yell, his fist glowing with gathered energy. Watching from the stands, Alan knows there are no guarantees in a real competition. Zeke tries to brag that his own victory is certain, but Alan tells him to shut it. In the ring, Rick goes for an airborne attack, while his opponent waits for the perfect opening. Alan notes that fighting in front of a massive crowd like this is a whole different beast. A heavy blow catches Rick right in the face, rattling his focus. Zeke points out two other fighters, who are clearly on a different level from everyone else. Alan recognizes Sandy, noting that she and her partner are already at a 4-star rank. Zeke figures watching Sandy's style will be a great way for Leica to learn. The first round ends with Rick face down on the floor. Marin is up next, but she's so terrified her face has gone completely pale. It doesn't go well, and North Hall quickly claims their second victory. Zeke meets the defeated pair, telling them they let the pressure of the arena win. They're both near tears, but he reminds them that nobody's life is on the line here. He flashes a smile, explaining that this is just a place to test their strength against others. That's enough to get their spirits back up, and they shout their thanks for the encouragement. Zeke turns to Rangus, reminding him that the next match is absolutely critical. Rangus looks at his opponent, a massive upperclassman covered in a golden aura. Naturally, the kid immediately starts crying and clings to Zeke in terror. He's completely overwhelmed by the thought of fighting a literal giant in front of this many people. Zeke grabs him by the head and forces him to actually look at his opponent. He asks Rangus to identify what weapon the big guy's even holding. Once Rangus realizes it's just a sword, Zeke tells him to stop overthinking and just focus. He gives him a quick tactical rundown on how to react to basic sword strikes. The goal is to stop seeing a monster and start seeing a weapon he can counter. Zeke sees Rangus's focus finally sharpen as he takes the advice to heart. Rangus steps into the ring, looking like a total underdog next to the massive upperclassman. The crowd starts laughing, already betting that the scrawny kid is going to get flattened. But Rangus isn't listening. His eyes are locked onto his opponent's movements. The big guy lunges with a piercing sword strike, but Rangus dances right around it. Laika is worried, but Zeke tells her to just look at how steady the kid's eyes have become. He's fully in the zone now, calmly avoiding every heavy swing coming his way. Frustrated, the opponent unleashes a wild flurry of strikes to try and pin him down. Rangus counters with his own spear technique, flowing through the attacks like water. He finds the perfect opening and drives his spear straight into the big guy's chest. The impact is massive, sending the upperclassman crashing onto his back. The instructor calls it immediately the match is over, and Rangus has pulled off the win. The announcer declares the third round a victory for East Hall, as Rangus stands over his defeated opponent. The kid lets out a massive sigh of relief, clearly glad that the high-stakes fight is finally over. Back with the rest of the group, Zeke flashes a confident grin and asks everyone if they're ready to start turning the tide. Rangus kicks off the tournament with a solid win, and the East Hall starts building some real momentum. They keep it rolling straight through the fourth match, racking up another victory for their side. Edges handles the fifth match with his shield, putting the East Hall just one win away from a total sweep. Now it's time for the sixth match, the one everyone's been waiting for. Laika steps up to face Sandy, and it's pretty clear these two have a history together. Sandy can't believe a bunch of kids who haven't even reached 3 stars are actually taking down North Hall elites. She admits she underestimated Laika's crew, but she isn't planning on letting it happen again. Sandy flares her power, telling Laika that allies come second if you want to actually lead the family. She insists that only overwhelming strength matters, and Laika starts to feel the pressure. Sandy is actually offended that someone of Laika's skill level is only ranked second in the East Hall. Laika takes the insult in stride, knowing exactly what's at stake for her team. She draws her blade, confident that with the strength she has now, she can win. Suddenly, Sandy vanishes from sight, leaving the crowd in total shock. She reappears in the air, challenging Laika to actually show off that strength she's bragging about. Their swords collide in a massive shower of sparks. Watching from the side, Zeke notes that, as expected, Sandy has the upper hand. He wonders just how far Laika can push herself against an opponent who's mastered the Thunder Spirit art even better than she has. Sandy lands a direct hit with her Thunder Needle technique, sending a shock straight through Laika. Celine screams out in fear as she watches her teammate take such a brutal hit. Laika gasps for air, trying to convince herself the wound is shallow enough to keep going. The rest of the guys are stunned. They knew Sandy used to train Laika, but this is turning into a slaughter. Sandy dodges a desperate swing, mocking Laika's old habit of wildly flailing when she's cornered. Laika tries to use a lightning flash slash, but Sandy counters immediately with scattered thunder. A massive explosion rocks the arena floor as their powers clash. Laika gets blasted back again, unable to find a single opening in her mentor's defense. Sandy stands over her, disappointed that Laika still hasn't become the strongest in the capital. Despite the blood and the beating, Laika struggles to her feet, refusing to quit. Sandy tells her to just give it up, claiming she simply isn't strong enough to win this. Watching from the crowd, a senior leader thinks they should have just forced Laika into the North Hall years ago. Laika stands her ground, her grip tightening on her sword as she stares her opponent down. Sandy sighs at her stubbornness and decides it's time to teach her a final lesson. She unleashes another wave of lightning, forcing Laika onto the defensive. Laika swings with everything she has left, desperate to land a blow. Sandy slams her blade down with enough force to shatter the ground beneath them. The impact sends Laika flying, her uniform torn and bloodied from the blast. Celine and the others can barely watch as their friend is torn apart, but Zeke sees something else he knows. Laika is finally starting to break out of her shell. Sandy prepares to end it, calling out her Thunder Spirit Greatsword art. She calls down a heavenly thunder, a massive pillar of light that engulfs the entire arena. As the dust begins to settle, the spectators assume the match is already over. But then they see her, Laika, is still standing, grinning right back at her former teacher. Sandy is frozen in shock, unable to believe her finishing blow actually failed to take her down. Laika admits that the old version of her would have stayed down, but she's been training hard for the last 5 years. With a grin, she tells Sandy that the fight is far from over. In fact, it's only just beginning. Zeke notices Laika is a bundle of nerves before her match. She admits her opponent is Sandy, her old mentor. While her uncle taught her the basics, Sandy was the one who really shaped her sword art. Back then, Sandy used to guide her through everything she didn't understand. She's more like a mentor than a sister. Zeke listens intently, understanding why she's so shaken up. She's never beaten Sandy even once. Both have grown stronger over the last 5 years, making the gap feel impossible to close. Zeke gives her a thumbs up, telling her to just remember everything they did in training. Laika looks a bit shell-shocked as she starts thinking back on those years. It wasn't exactly a walk in the park. Flashbacks show her hauling boulders and getting kicked around while Zeke just watched. Just the memory of that torture is enough to make her stomach turn. Zeke points out her biggest bad habit. Her vision narrows whenever her emotions take over. He explains that those 5 years of hell were all about teaching her how to stay calm in a fight. He's confident she can read her opponent now, but Laika is still skeptical about it working against someone like Sandy. Zeke tells her she'll get it once the fight starts. Her real talent is being able to truly see her opponent's movements. Laika clenches her fist, trying to internalize his words. She gives him a nervous smile, noting that he makes it sound way easier than it actually is. But the talk worked. She thanks him, finally feeling a bit more relaxed. Zeke looks pretty pleased with himself as she heads out. He gives her one final piece of advice. Treat Sandy's Thunderclap greatsword art just like they did in training. Across the arena, Sandy waits with a cold, focused expression. The match gets brutal fast. Laika takes a hit to the arm but says she's finally seeing the pattern. She intentionally took the hits head-on just to observe the technique from up close. Sandy doesn't slow down though. She suddenly shifts gears and speeds up. She launches a high-speed piercing strike called Thunder Needle. The sudden change in rhythm catches Laika off guard for a split second, but then she catches it. She counters with her own Thunderflash slash. She realizes there was a tempo variation she was missing, and now that she gets it, she just has to put it to use. Sandy is completely shocked. Nobody is supposed to be able to copy a technique like that instantly. Up in the stands, Edges and the other students can't believe their eyes. Zeke just laughs. Raymond asks how she pulled it off, and Zeke explains that fighting a master of your own art is the best classroom there is. This is the result of her learning to stay calm enough to analyze a technique while literally being hit by it. Raymond realizes that Laika used to just lose her composure and get tunnel vision. Now, she has the presence of mind to actually observe her opponent in the middle of a battle. It's like she's finally reached an entirely new level of swordsmanship. A massive bolt of lightning crashes down as they clash again. Sandy's eyes go wide as she realizes she's actually the one being overpowered. Laika tells her she's been training with someone who nearly killed her every single day. She calls out to her sister, ready to end this with her own version of the family art. She unleashes Heavenly Thunder, a massive explosion of energy that rocks the entire stadium. The arena is completely swallowed by the blinding flash and dust. Sandy lies on the ground, beaten but smiling. She admits that Laika has finally surpassed her. The dust settles as the referee calls the match over. Laika stands tall, bloodied but victorious. The East Hall takes the win. Laika is just relieved that the whole ordeal managed to get settled during her match, sparing her from any more stress. She points out that if she'd lost, it would have been Zeke, or Sieg, as she calls him, who'd have to step up against Edges next. She asks him if he's heard of the guy standing with the opposing team, who's apparently becoming quite famous. Turns out, he's a total legend, the greatest genius the Van Blade family has ever produced. Zeke eyes him from across the arena, acknowledging that from what he can see, the guy definitely has a different aura. Laika admits that even for someone as strong as Zeke, facing a monster like that would have been a complete toss-up. Suddenly, the instructor announces that even though the East Hall's victory is decided, the matches will continue until the very end. Zeke and his silver-haired teammate are both left completely stunned by the sudden change in the competition rules. Alan finds the whole situation bizarre, since a team match usually ends as soon as 4 opponents are defeated. Zeke stares out at the arena, wondering what kind of game the organizers are actually playing by dragging this out, but then a grin spreads across his face. He's not exactly complaining. If he gets a chance to test his skills in another round, he's more than ready. Edges from the North Hall admits their defeat but seems thrilled to finally be facing Zeke on the battlefield. He questions if Zeke was truly that eager for this showdown, noting that he's the chosen representative for the East Hall. Even with someone as capable as Laika around, Zeke was the one selected, leaving Edges deeply curious about his true identity. Edges looks at the boy, acknowledging the pressure of his lineage while noting he's still only ranked as a 2-star. Zeke's hand rests firmly on the hilt of his blade, prepared for whatever comes next. The thought of the upcoming clash clearly excites him, a wide grin spreading across his face. Zeke realizes they share the same mindset, both having looked forward to crossing blades for a long time. Edges is a well-known name, often hailed as a once-in-a-century prodigy, despite his young age. Zeke's eyes glow with a fierce golden light as he admits he's been wanting this fight too. The anticipation is building, and the challenger is more hyped than ever to get started. He draws his sword with a sharp ring, noting it's been quite a while since he's had to use it like this. "Here I come," he calls out, lunging forward with blinding speed. Edges is caught off guard by the sheer agility, impressed that Zeke could close such a distance in a single stride. Zeke unleashes his light blade technique, a swift strike that cuts through the air. But as the blade swings, Edges realizes something is off. The presence he felt from the weapon has completely vanished. He barely manages to move in time, the glowing edge of the sword passing inches from his body. He successfully evades the attack, landing safely on his feet. Zeke is genuinely surprised, not expecting his opponent to be able to twist his body midair to escape. He lets out a laugh, thoroughly enjoying the challenge and daring Edges to show him even more. Edges shifts into his 1,000-blade single sword style, calling out his wave blade technique as water-like energy swirls around him. The fluid motion makes it nearly impossible to predict where the next strike will land. Edges follows up with a raging surge, a powerful blast of energy that forces Zeke to leap high into the air. Zeke just smiles, admitting that while he didn't plan on getting cut, this is going surprisingly well. He counters with a lightning strike, the clash of their powers sending a shockwave through the arena. His movements are completely unpredictable, yet they don't lose an ounce of speed or raw power. It's a sharp, calculated assault that perfectly reads the rhythm of his opponent's breathing. Edges is blown back, but he can't help but admire the magnificent skill on display. The North Hall prodigy finds himself unable to pin Zeke down, even after all his training. Stunned, he asks what kind of training the boy has been doing to reach this level. Zeke just tells him they can save that talk for after the match is decided. Zeke clenches his fist, his body surging with an even more intense aura. He notes the insane power Edges is putting out, while Edges is shocked that a 2-star can fight like this. Edges realizes Zeke is adapting to his breathing patterns in real time, making him far more dangerous than he first thought. Seeing the change in Zeke's stance, he asks if the observation phase is finally over. Zeke gives a short confirmation, signaling that he's ready to turn up the heat. He leaps into the air once more, coming down with a heavy, vertical strike. The clash is explosive, both fighters pouring everything they have into their movements. Edges uses a shadow afterimage to deceive his opponent's eyes. Zeke is momentarily confused as he strikes through a phantom, leaving him vulnerable for a split second. Edges ends up with a wound across his chest, blood staining his uniform as he asks if Zeke wants to see more. Zeke looks down, realizing that he also took a hit in the exchange. Instead of backing down, his grin only grows wider. This is exactly the kind of fun he was looking for. Sandy blinks, trying to clear the cobwebs. She's lying flat on her back, wondering what just happened. Her teammates immediately swarm her. They're relieved she's finally awake after that knockout. Reality sets in as she looks down at her torn uniform. The sting of defeat is starting to sink in. A quick flash of the match shows the moment she was sent flying across the arena. She starts to apologize for the loss, but the squad won't hear it. They actually apologize to her for holding her back. Celine tells her to drop the guilt. Everyone knew the opponent was just on another level. Sandy manages a small smile. She tells the group they'll just have to do their best together next time. The squad's spirit is restored. Sandy then asks if the other matches have already started. One of the guys points toward the center stage. Turns out, one duel is still raging on. It's Edges, and he's not holding anything back. He's got 5 aura blades circling him like a halo. Sandy can't believe what she's seeing. She didn't think Edges could maintain this level of power for this long. Zeke watches the approach, perfectly calm as the aura blades come screaming toward him. Edges pulls off his 5 shadow 1 blade move, a flurry of strikes meant to shred his opponent. But even after all that, Zeke isn't even out of breath. He's just standing there, waiting for more. Edges is stunned. He asks what he's made of, but Zeke just credits his basic stamina training. He warns the boy that the training is only going to get tougher from here. As they continue to exchange blows, Zeke mentally rates the quality of the attacks. The sharpness is decent, but Zeke thinks it'll be a lot more interesting once the kid actually grows up. Zeke is genuinely enjoying himself. This fight has helped him understand how combat has evolved over the last millennium. 1,000 years ago, everything was focused on the physical act of the attack itself. Ether was treated merely as a support tool, something used to slightly boost the natural flow of things. But today, the focus is on materializing ether to create entire techniques out of thin air. To him, mastery of ether has become the very soul of modern martial arts. Edges, lunges again, but it's no use. Every single strike is perfectly countered before it can connect. The kid starts laughing. He was so wrapped up in the fight that he lost track of the last 2 hours. To him, this isn't just a match, it's the most fascinating thing he's ever experienced. But he can feel it. Zeke has completely dismantled his style and learned every trick he has. The onlookers are exhausted just watching them. They can't believe two people can keep up this pace for so long. Edges takes a deep breath and readies himself. He knows this is the final stretch. Zeke agrees. It's about time they finish this marathon. He tells the kid it was a splendid time. It's rare he gets to cut loose like this. As a reward, Zeke decides to bestow a brand new technique upon him. Edges laughs, finally accepting that he couldn't win. But he's going down swinging. He gathers every bit of aura he has left for his 5-blade ultimate sword. Zeke clenches his fist, the air around him beginning to vibrate with raw power. He unleashes the Dragon Extinction Combat Art, second form. The arena floor shatters as beams of golden energy erupt from the ground. A massive spectral fist slams down, dwarfing Edges completely. A pillar of golden light erupts, shaking the entire stadium to its foundations. The others huddle behind their shields, terrified by the sheer destructive force. Sandy looks on, wide-eyed, wondering if anyone could have actually survived that. The instructor steps in and calls it. The match is officially over. Edges lies in the dirt, completely spent. He can't even lift a finger, but he's got a huge grin on his face after facing such absurd strength. Zeke stands over him, totally composed. He's the official winner for the East Wing, though he humble brags that he's still got a long way to go in his training. The spectators are losing their minds. Nobody can believe the legendary Edges actually lost, especially to some unknown guy from the East Wing. The instructor steps in to keep things moving. He tells everyone to prepare themselves for the next round, while they restore the plaza Zeke just trashed. Raymond and Celine are practically vibrating with excitement. They knew Zeke was a beast, but seeing him take down Edges is on another level. Sandy walks up, looking at the cratered ground. She jokes about him wrecking the place again, and calls him a total freak of nature. Zeke doesn't have much time to relax. He's already focused on the next matchup and the next candidate for the family head. That candidate is Vanille, and he's finally stepping onto the field. As the top dog of the West Wing, the pressure is on. Zeke keeps a close eye on the West Wing group. In his opinion, they definitely have the highest overall quality of any team in the competition. But the South Wing isn't exactly a bunch of pushovers either. They've got a girl with purple hair who looks like she can hold her own. Zeke is genuinely curious to see how this Clash of Titans plays out, but things don't go exactly how he planned. The look on the girls' faces tells you everything you need to know about what happens next. The match between the West and South Wings starts and finishes in a heartbeat, becoming completely one-sided. It wasn't even a fight. It was a slaughter. Vanille stands over the purple-haired girl, not even breaking a sweat while she lies broken at his feet. The referee watches the arena, sensing that something is fundamentally wrong with the way the match just ended. Retton stands there calmly, his vine-wrapped weapon resting at his side as he stares down his opponent. The instructor calls the match, putting a stop to the brutality and declaring West Hall the winners. The bracket is set for the finals, with East Hall facing off against West Hall in just 1 hour. Laika and Zeke look on, stunned that Lady Lila was defeated so completely. Zeke questions the result, knowing that the gap in skill shouldn't have been large enough for such a one-sided fight. Retton's attacks were so precise that his opponent's power seemed to fail her when she needed it most. Rangus stays on his knees, his body trembling as he struggles to comprehend how the match went so wrong. Zeke glances at the referee, noticing that he isn't the only one who spotted something suspicious. Raymond and Alan are in shock, realizing that their next opponents are on a completely different level. Sandy tries to make sense of it, but even she has to admit that Lila looked completely helpless out there. Eno warns them that Vanille must have an incredible amount of power to back up his arrogance. Zeke scans the West Hall group, feeling the weight of their combined strength. Eno apologizes for sounding so discouraged right before their big match. Sandy looks down, admitting that she lost her match as well, and feeling the pressure of their disadvantage. Eno is frustrated with his own performance, especially losing to opponents with fewer stars than him. But he isn't ready to give up, clenching his fist in determination. He reminds them that if they stay focused, they can still win against stronger enemies. Zeke admires their fighting spirit, noting how much his students have grown even in the face of defeat. He looks over at Laika, noticing that she's far more uneasy than the others. He knows he can't give her advice until he figures out exactly what's going on with the West Hall's techniques. Alan asks if she's okay, but Laika is clearly lost in her own thoughts. She decides to head off on her own to clear her head before the finals begin. Sitting by the fountain, Laika is haunted by the sheer power Vanille displayed. She stares into the water, knowing that even someone like Edges couldn't have walked away without a scratch. Her mind drifts back to 5 years ago, the last time they fought, and she lost miserably. She spent every moment since then training to avenge that defeat. But seeing how strong he's become, she felt a small, shameful spark of relief that he'd likely face Zeke next. She hates herself for that feeling, knowing that relief is just another way of admitting she's already beaten. She clenches her fist, the frustration boiling over as she refuses to back down. "You look awfully serious," a voice calls out. It's Vanille, approaching her with his usual smug grin. Laika doesn't even want to look at him, telling him she has nothing to say. He tells her not to be so prickly, mocking her with the idea that she might become his wife if he takes the family head title. He walks past, confident that she's finally realized she can never win. Vanille stops right beside her, leaning in close as he puts a hand on her shoulder. He tells her to just give up and admit that she'll never reach his level. Laika snaps and slaps his hand away, telling him to shut his mouth. Vanille just laughs, his eyes cold and full of malice. He turns back to Yesif, telling him it's time to get ready for the next move. Zeke stands alone, watching them walk off and knowing that a confrontation is inevitable. Yesif suggests they strike first, since Zeke managed to defeat Edges in the past. Vanille agrees, wanting to set everything up before Zeke can notice what they're planning. Vanille points out that according to his observations, their target was deliberately taking hits during his previous fights. They can use that to their advantage and plant something during the upcoming match. Vanille brushes off the fact that Zeke managed to beat Edges. He's confident that even without any tricks, he wouldn't lose to someone like that. As they look over the fountain, Vanille makes it clear that in the end, they're the ones who will come out on top. Ranges clenches his fist, trying to get his nerves under control. Looking at the West Wing representatives is like staring at a mountain of elite talent. He starts to spiral, wondering if someone like him actually has a chance to win. Zeke shuts that doubt down real quick, with a smack to the head. He asks Rongus what happened to the confidence he was showing earlier. To Zeke, fighting just to lose is the dumbest thing you can do. He tells Rangus that if he's going to step into that ring, he better fight to win, regardless of the gap in strength. A little encouragement goes a long way, and Zeke reminds him that he's trained well. Then he leaves him with one final parting gift, a reminder to relax his shoulders. He explains the secret to the Great Strength Fist art. It's about gathering power, but tension just makes it scatter. Zeke gives him a quick shake to help him loosen up physically. It works like a charm, and Rangus finally feels like he has a real shot. Laika is standing back, suspicious of how Zeke knows so much about a technique he supposedly never learned. Zeke just gives her a smug look. His answer is simple, it's just because he's him. Rangus steps into the arena, staring down his opponent. He tells himself that, this time, he's not walking away with a loss. Retin just scoffs, thinking a scrub who already lost before is being way too cocky. Rangus grits his teeth, determined to show everyone he's changed. The referee officially kicks off the first match between the East and West Wings. Retin moves fast, opening up with a Battle Mantis dagger art strike. The impact sends Rangus skidding back across the stone floor. Retin mocks him for trying to act tough by blocking with his aura. He follows up with a move called Devouring Swarm, overwhelming Rangus with sheer speed. Rangus realizes the guy is insanely strong, but he refuses to let himself be steamrolled. He tries to counter, but Retin's movements are too fluid to pin down. Retin is so confident he's laughing, sure that Rangus can't even touch him. Rangus feels the pressure mounting as he realizes he can't catch his opponent. He flashes back to Zeke's lesson about relaxing and focusing all his power into one point. Retin lunges in for what he thinks is the final blow, the piercing bee flash. But Rangus is waiting for it. He catches the blade and stops Retin cold. The look on Retin's face says it all. He never expected his attack to be caught barehanded. Rangus unleashes the Great Strength Punch, pouring everything into one direct hit. The force of the punch is incredible, creating a massive explosion of energy. The rest of the students can only watch in stunned silence as the dust clears. The referee steps forward and declares the East Wing the winner of the match. Retin is left in a heap on the ground, coughing up blood and completely defeated. Rangus throws his fist high in the air, letting out a triumphant roar. Retin can't even process what happened, still trying to wrap his head around the fact that he lost. He stumbles over to the West Wing elite, looking for some kind of support. Retin bows his head and tries to apologize to his team leader for the loss. But Vanille doesn't have time for failures and sends him flying with a single dismissive blow. Vanille Fafnir Eldragon sits on his throne, giving the cold order to crush the opposition. The West Wing elites shout in unison, ready to carry out his commands. On the other side, Rangus cheers for his friend Marin, hoping she can pull off a win. Marin readies her weapon, psyching herself up for the challenge. The match officially begins, and Marin lunges forward with everything she's got. She unleashes her Spark Slash, a fast and powerful strike. Her opponent, a member of the West Wing, effortlessly deflects the blow with his spear. He hits her with a counter that sends her reeling back. The guy doesn't let up, activating his Great Chaos Spear art to rain down a piercing barrage. Marin is completely overwhelmed by the speed and power of the assault. Edges is in shock, unable to believe how wide the gap in strength actually is. Laika grits her teeth in frustration, hating that she has to watch her friend get brutalized like this. Ranges tries to rush onto the field to help, but he's held back to prevent a disqualification. The instructor calls the match, realizing it's already over. The West Wing elite stands triumphantly over a bloody and unconscious Marin as the victory is announced. Ranges rushes to her side, cradling her head and desperately calling her name. Ranges holds a devastated Laika as Marin and the others try to offer some comfort. Zeke watches silently from the side, his mind already working on what to do next. Edges snaps, yelling at the opponent for taking things way too far. The student just looks back, completely indifferent to the outrage he's caused. He shrugs it off, claiming he was just being thorough with his victory. Alan and Edges aren't buying it to them, it was just plain cruelty. Behind the scenes, Vanille is gloating, believing that showing mercy is only for the weak. Alan demands to know if this was Vanille's idea, but the guy just tells her to forfeit if she can't handle the heat. He leaves them with a warning. They're all going to end up just like Laika. Next up is Retin, who stands across from Ranges, smugly offering him a chance to walk away. Ranges is visibly shaken, staring down the person who's been looking down on him for years. Retin doubles down on the insults, telling Ranges not to even bother saying his name. He brings up their past in the village, asking if Ranges needs another lesson in being a useless worm. Laika tries to shout something, but Ranges stops her, knowing he has to handle this himself. He points his spear and makes a bold claim. He's going to surpass Retin right here. Ranges takes a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves before the clash begins. Suddenly, Zeke's voice echoes in his head, catching him completely off guard. Zeke tells him to stay calm and not let the pressure get to him. He explains that he's projecting an experience from years ago directly into Ranges' mind. It's more than just a trick. It's a crucial piece of advice for what's coming. Zeke wants him to focus on the flow of nature, the way clouds drift and water moves without resistance. Whenever things get tough, that's the image he needs to hold on to. The referee gives the signal, and the match officially kicks off. Ranges doesn't hesitate, lunging forward with a water pierce. Retin is too quick, parrying the spear strike with ease. He immediately counters with his own serpent assault technique. The sword connects, and Ranges can't help but groan as the impact rattles him. Retin laughs, mocking Ranges for having all that talk but no strength to back it up. He charges back in, and Ranges braces for the next wave of attacks. Retin unleashes a serpent slash, his blade moving in a blur. Ranges gets caught in the side, the strike drawing blood through his uniform. He thought he had the block, but the attack curved midair. Retin keeps the pressure on, daring Ranges to actually try and fight back. Ranges tries to find his rhythm with the Cloudwater style, but he's struggling to stay fluid. Another heavy strike sends him reeling backward. From the sidelines, the East Hall crew is shouting his name, fearing the worst. Ranges realizes he's in trouble. Retin is using his own momentum against him. Retin pins him down, sneering that a pseudo-dragon's kid could never actually be strong. He calls Ranges' father trash, and that finally hits a nerve. Retin grabs him by the hair, forcing him to look up while he continues the verbal abuse. A brutal kick follows, with Retin yelling that fakes will never beat the real thing. Ranges lies on the ground, bloodied and beaten, wondering if he really is as weak as everyone says. Ranges is at his breaking point, tears streaming down his face as he starts to believe the insults, convinced that he really is just a fake. In the depths of his despair, a memory of his father surfaces a quiet day by the river when he was asked if he liked fishing. His younger self had been so full of joy, excitedly sharing a bond with the man who taught him more than just how to catch a fish. His father spoke of the peace he found in the simple act of watching the world move around him. He explained how the clouds and the water never stopped for anyone, simply moving with a calm that most people forgot to notice. To him, the vastness of nature was a reminder that the worries of a single person were small and fleeting. Back in the arena, Retin closes in for what he thinks is the final blow, his face twisted in a smug grin of victory. But those words finally click for Ranges, the idea of drifting freely and flowing endlessly without resistance. The change is instantaneous, his eyes sharpen with a new clarity as he effortlessly parries the strike that was meant to end him. Retin charges again, but the atmosphere has shifted completely, the distance between them feeling much longer than before. Even the instructor takes notice, his eyes widening as he realizes he's witnessing a sudden and profound awakening. Battered and bloodied, Ranges stands his ground, now radiating a calm, fluid power that marks the true beginning of his fight. Letten is completely stunned. He can't wrap his head around how Ranges managed to hit a 3-star rank already. He grips his sword tight, refusing to accept that a fake like Ranges is now standing on equal ground with him. Letten lets out a roar of frustration, declaring that he'll never accept this result. He lunges forward, unleashing his meandering slash technique that sends waves of purple energy across the stage. Ranges doesn't flinch, keeping his eyes locked on his opponent as he weaves through the chaotic energy. Letton starts to sweat, realizing his big move didn't even slow the kid down. Desperate, he fires off his Serpent Strike style, a chaotic swarm of strikes meant to overwhelm anything in its path. But Ranges is like a ghost, slipping past every single blow with calm, effortless movements. Sandy watches from the sidelines, gripped by the intensity of the fight, while Zeke remains perfectly composed. Zeke observes that Ranges has finally taken a massive step toward grasping the true essence of his martial art. Sandy looks totally lost, wondering what kind of essence Zeke is talking about. Zeke explains the philosophy of the style like water. It's flexible enough to swallow any force and let it wash away. He's impressed that Ranges is mastering this level of technique right in the middle of a serious match. The fact that he can concentrate this deeply in such a short time is nothing short of remarkable. Ranges is battered and bleeding, but his ether is flaring up with more intensity than ever before. Letton is losing his mind, screaming for Ranges to stay away as the tide turns against him. Ranges thrusts his spear upward, causing a massive explosion of aether that shatters Letton's guard. Zeke watches with a smirk, knowing that while water can be gentle, it can also be terrifyingly powerful. Ranges raises his spear high, focusing every ounce of his power for one final strike. He realizes that once the water turns violent, there's no one who can stand against the current. He unleashes a literal torrent of energy, a massive blast that sweeps the entire arena. Letton is left face down in a crater as the referee officially calls the match for the East Wing. Ranges just stands there looking dazed, like he can't quite believe what he just did. Sandy starts screaming his name, ecstatic that they actually pulled off a win. The team rushes over to congratulate him on making 3-star rank and taking down a major opponent. Ranges stares at his fallen enemy, still in shock that he managed to win against Letton. Sandy and Marin are thrilled, praising him for such an incredible performance. He thinks back to all the times Letton looked down on him, and the reality of his victory finally starts to set in. The boy starts to tear up, overwhelmed with emotion as he clutches his spear. Raymond and Sandy are dying to know more about that insane move he used at the end. Raymond compares it to a water dragon ascending a waterfall, but Ranges is just as confused as everyone else. Zeke steps in and identifies the technique as the Rising Dragon Piercer. He explains it's a high-level move from the second volume of the style, leaving Sandy wondering how he'd even know that. Zeke makes up a quick excuse, saying he just saw it once in the archives. He praises Ranges again, noting that reaching this level through self-study is incredibly impressive. Secretly, Zeke reflects on how he created this style himself in his past life, though he never expected it to be split into volumes. He's just happy to see new talent finally starting to bloom under his guidance. The referee yells at the East Wing to stop chatting and get off the arena for the next round. Raymond and Marin are fired up, ready to keep their winning streak going. With Ranges' victory serving as a trigger, the morale of the East Wing reaches an all-time peak. However, the West Wing rallies quickly after their defeat, making the following matches even more brutal. In the fourth match, Celine gives it everything she's got, but ends up losing by a hair. Raymond is shown on the battlefield, battered but victorious. The text notes that he showed incredible grit to secure a hard-fought win, pushing the contest into its final stages. Joining Ranges and the others, Raymond admits that they barely managed to pull it off. Ranges is hyped, congratulating his friend on the solid win. Celine is still feeling guilty about her own loss, but Laika tells her to drop it. She reminds her teammate that they only need 4 points to win the whole thing. Laika points out that with 3 wins and 2 losses, victory is right in front of them. She's confident that as soon as she wins her match, it'll be officially over. Suddenly Zeke walks up and calls her name, catching her completely off guard. Laika turns around, wondering what he wants now. He leans in way too close, startling the girl as he asks a serious question. He wants to know exactly how she's feeling in this moment. Laika gets flustered and pushes him away, complaining that he's in her personal space. She insists she's perfectly fine and has no intention of losing. On the sidelines, Ranges is cheering at the top of his lungs, wishing her good luck. Zeke just stands there with his arms crossed, his eyes full of concern. Laika is fired up and ready to go, giving a determined shout as she prepares to enter the arena for her round. But Zeke doesn't look convinced. He stares after her, his mind racing as he feels like something is very wrong. A thick, purple energy begins to swirl around the area, giving Zeke a deep sense of unease that something has been sabotaged. Alan looks down at her defeated opponent, calling him nothing more than a useless pawn. She points her blade forward, confident that everything is about to return to the way it was. Laika isn't intimidated, telling her that won't happen because she's the one who's going to win. The instructor calls for the 6th round and signals for the 2 girls to begin. They both charge instantly, moving so fast the crowd can barely keep up with their movements. Alan starts using lightning, proving that she's a speedster who might even surpass Sandy. A massive clash between their weapons sends a shockwave through the arena. Alan realizes that if things had stayed fair, she might have actually lost this match. But Vanille has already stepped in, using his hidden purple thorns to sabotage Laika from the shadows. A strange energy suddenly surrounds Laika, leaving her confused and frozen in place. Alan takes advantage of the opening, jumping in and telling her she'll never be able to win. Laika tries to block the attack, but she's clearly losing her footing. Alan follows up by driving a knee straight into her stomach. The East Hall students look on in horror as they realize something is seriously wrong. Laika struggles to stand, panicked because she can't seem to release her lightning anymore. Alan just smirks, enjoying the fact that her opponent is completely helpless. A heavy hit sends Laika flying back as her defenses fail entirely. She's bloodied and battered, realizing it's not just her lightning, she can't use ether at all. A warrior's body is linked to their internal ether, which enhances every single movement. Without it, the body becomes defenseless, making every strike from the opponent potentially fatal. Alan continues her relentless assault on the now powerless girl. Laika grits her teeth, desperately trying to at least keep herself from being killed. On the sidelines, the team can see that she's acting strange and isn't fighting back like she should. Rongus realizes her aether has been completely cut off. Laika finally hits the floor, her body unable to take any more punishment. Alan stands over her, mocking her for being a successor candidate who can't even use her powers. She prepares a final strike to end the match for good. Alan looks down with a cold stare, deciding that this is the end. Rangus screams for her to stop before she goes too far. Zeke watches with a dark, intense look, his gaze fixed on the arena. Alan swings her blade down for a finishing blow on the defenseless girl. Suddenly, Sandy jumps in and blocks the attack with her own massive sword. Alan is forced back, looking annoyed that her final strike was interrupted. She tries to act like Sandy is the one breaking the rules by interfering. Sandy isn't having it, screaming that Alan was clearly trying to kill her. The other students watch from the stands, stunned by the sudden turn of events. Alan just puts on a fake smile and denies she was doing anything wrong. Edges steps forward, agreeing that the last blow was far too dangerous even for a duel. Alan just scoffs, asking them if they're calling the match unfair. Edges shouts back that it was obvious to everyone that Laika couldn't use ether at all. Vanille and his team step in, claiming they fight under the assumption of real combat, where weakness isn't an excuse. Sandy doesn't back down, screaming that a simple match should never be a fight to the death. Vanille smirks, calling them soft, and saying that's exactly why they lose. He doubles down, reminding them that this is a real fight they're in. He tries to sound reasonable, claiming they have no intention of killing anyone and know how to hold back. But then he adds a jab, wondering if something inside Laika just happened to break. Sandy is absolutely fuming, her face contorting with rage as she glares at him. Zeke remains silent for now, watching the interaction with a calm but intense focus. The instructor releases a surge of power, demanding to know who gave them permission to chatter. Sandy tries to point out the danger of the last attack, but the man just tells her to shut up. He makes it clear that he's the only one who decides whether a match stops or continues. Zeke kneels by the unconscious Laika and quietly apologizes for the mess. The instructor declares victory for the West Hall and orders everyone non-participating to leave immediately. Zeke lifts Laika into his arms while Sandy picks up her student's discarded sword. Ranges and the other students rush over, terrified for their friend's safety. Zeke reassures them that she'll be fine and they're taking her to get medical help right away. He gives them a small smile, trying to ease their panic as they head out. Sandy looks at Zeke, realizing he was also ready to step in if she hadn't done it first. He doesn't say much, just keeps moving to get Laika to the medical office. Sandy still finds it hard to believe that someone as strong as Laika was overwhelmed so easily. She admits that things have been feeling weird since the very first match of the tournament. Zeke thanks her for the concern and starts heading back toward the arena floor. Vanille is already waiting, mockingly telling Zeke that his defeat is already a guaranteed fact. The instructor officially announces the start of the 7th round between the two halls. Vanille immediately goes on the attack, throwing a punch with everything he's got. Zeke effortlessly dodges the strike, leaving a massive shockwave behind him as he moves. The students in the stands are left speechless by his insane reaction speed. Even the stern instructor looks completely caught off guard by the move. Zeke lands firmly on his feet, pointing out how defenseless Vanille actually is, despite all his talk. He looks back with a chilling smirk, welcoming Vanille to the real combat he loves so much.
Hey guys, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Comment down below what other manhwas I should cover. And without further ado, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you guys in the next video. And trust me, it is going to be a banger.